hang on. I know the first one that I would pick, which is very, very simple, which is Predator.
Cool.
And if you had Predator 2, I would have chosen Predator 2. Not that I think it is a better film, but a film that I would rewatch over and over again. In fact, I rewatched it last night, and it picked up where it left off with the Gary Busey dying in the freezer. I think I can drop into like almost any Predator, or at least the first 2 Predator movies. Huge Predator fan, so I'm definitely bringing Predator with me. I'll watch this over and over again. So we're going to talk about this little sleeper right here called King Kong Lives, which is like a King Kong horror movie. It is brutal. Like, King Kong legit eats people and stomps on them. Yeah, the whole scene where Sarah Connor brings him back with a fake heart. This is a Dino De Laurentiis production, which I'm all about Dino De Laurentiis. Anything his name is on, I'm watching it. Carlito's Way. I love this movie. This is such a poetic, beautiful movie. I think this is probably one of Pacino's best performance, if not his best performance, outside of The Godfather. I just love it. I love everything about this movie. I love how this influenced Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And Sean Penn is like ridiculous in this movie. It has such a beautiful ending. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's writer-director Vincent DiSanti, and I'm here with my 3 VHS pick for The Desert Island, and you are watching the Film Stock Podcast.
It's a Zoom call, so you can't have that.
There's not that like nuance of like the in-person relationships.
Yeah. So this is nice. I mean, you could have like a couple of ferns. It'd be great.
We had talked about it.
But then you're just cluttering the space.
So the other thing that we were talking about is, okay, like if we ever got a guest where, they couldn't make it, like how do we do that, right? And we had talked about, we've got the projection right there, but Ace had the best idea. He was like, let's what's the name of it? It's Space Ghost.
Yes.
And he was like, let's just put a TV in that seat and like have them projected there.
Yes.
And I was like, now I want a Zoom guest.
You could build like a dummy with like the head.
Yeah.
You just sit it in, and it's got and it'd be a rad look.
Yeah. We'll have to tap you in and help us when that.
We got TVs.
Eventually comes. Yeah, that's right.
I got some small TVs at the thing. They would definitely work.
Do you want to like quickly plug that? What's it again? Vinny? No.
No, I can't. No. My dad is actually sort of like, I don't want people knowing about it.
I don't want people to know. Huge resource though for you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
It was nice meeting you at New Bedford Film Festival. Hell of a run, by the way. You guys killed it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a team effort. Seth and Evan do a ton of work. I've been on the board for the first 2 years that we've been going, and so it's a labor of love, but we love it, and we're happy with the way it's growing, and we're looking forward to the next year and the years beyond that.
I think I said this to you yesterday, but I was really impressed by unfortunately, I only got to go for the one day, and I think we saw 3 blocks worth of films, maybe 2, but every time I go to like a festival, and especially with short films, I told this to Alyssa, and I think I told this to Ryan as well, Ryan Nunes, who is on the podcast. I'm like, whenever I see a short film where it's like, oh, this is going to be more than 20 minutes, I'm like, they're probably fucking doing something wrong. But watching, especially that last block that we were in, I mean, you really had some talented filmmakers show up to the festival this year. Really impressive.
Yeah, I know. We had a run of great filmmakers this year. During the award ceremony, it was really tough, really picking who was going to be one above the other, because everything brought such a good spectrum of different types of productions. But at the end of the day, we ended up sort of picking less films than we did in our first year. We really focused on trying to find the quality ones that would play, and we do take that into account. I mean, I think any filmmaker who's sort of looking at delivering a 20-minute short to a film festival, you know that you're only getting 1 or 2 slots. And so that's what we talked about. We sort of talked about those limited spaces and what the requirements would be, and what we should sort of hold that sort of standard, because we do want people to go through the entire block.
Yeah,
if there's a clunker in the middle that's 20 minutes long, there's maybe some 5 minutes, some 8 minutes, some 3 minutes after that don't get any looks because, people leave the theater or whatever. But that all comes into the programming, and that comes down to like Seth, and like Seth does a lot of that stuff. He does a really great job. I can't remember how many films we went through. I think it was over 200, 300 films. But
really,
yeah, no, it's year round. I mean, I think we start taking selections again later this summer, and we start the process, late summer, early fall, watching films, and we make sure to really sort of tap in and watch them. And we have everything, so we have to watch all genres. So it's not just I'm tapping into horror and kind of getting to do that. I'm sort of excited when I get to see horror.
Because that's kind of like your
My
bread and
thing,
butter.
yeah. I'm a big horror guy. I like comedy. I love animation. So when animation comes through, I'm always sort of looking at what the, what new animators are doing, students that are coming out of school, what they're able to, build these days is amazing. So, and as a filmmaker, it's sort of inspiring because you see people doing the work, and you get ideas, and you're just sitting there like, wow, this is very clever the way they came up with this, or and you want films to come into the festival because you want to show them to people because you want them to then inspire, and that's I think the biggest goal of New Bedford Film Festival is that we want to inspire local artists and local filmmakers who have been sort of pushing it and probably doing it over the years, but don't know that there is a place that they can go to show their films to other people, and that they should get organized. They should come out. They should get to meet other filmmakers and start, putting out projects, because if we're going to be doing this every year, that's a lot of opportunities for people in the South Coast to really kind of come out of their shell. It's the opportunity for other people in the state and the region to come down and show their films to an audience that haven't seen it before. And then we really want to coach our local filmmakers, our South Coast filmmakers, to make really, really solid shorts that we send them out into the rest of the country and the rest of the world, representing New Bedford and the South Coast of Massachusetts, saying, hey, we're here. We want to build a film community, and there's a bunch of talented individuals that deserve some eyes.
Hell yeah. And going back to the idea of like local, my understanding is you're a local, but kind of a recent transplant back.
Yeah. So I moved to LA in 2008. I graduated from Worcester State University.
Shout out.
It was college then, but it's a university now, so I get to say university.
What's on the degree?
What was it? It's communication, film, and editing.
No, I'm kidding. Is it Worcester State or is it Worcester University?
It's college. It's college. I'm going to have to get that amended. I'll just white it out. It doesn't matter. Nobody looks. But no, I graduated in 2007. I was working at a place called Cardoza's Wine and Spirits in southern New England. There was a store in the Dartmouth area that I worked in. And I really had no film contacts. I called a couple of people, and everyone said the same thing. Like, you just got to know somebody, and, your number will come up or whatever. And it was sort of asking around. The only person who I knew who worked in the industry was a buddy of mine who I grew up with, like one of my best friends. And he had gone to Savannah School of Art and Design, started working in LA as a VFX artist at Digital Domain. And he was working on, at the time, Flags of Our Fathers, Pirates of the Caribbean. And when I was going to move out there, he was working on The Mummy, and he had told me about a VFX position that had opened up at the studio, VFX PA, where I would just go and sort of do shot notes and shot updates and kind of go through shot lists and things like that and make sure things were lining up. It wasn't anything, getting Chinese food, things like that.
Yeah.
But there was a position opening up, and I should apply, and I did. And it took about half a year for the whole process to go through, because they were starting up Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons, and they had they were waiting for one team to finish so they can start another team, and sort of waiting for that. And it was going to be at the end of the year, so it gave me some time to raise some money. Ended up moving out west with my best friend, who I went to school at Worcester State with, and who I'd known since I was a kid, since we were 5 years old. And so move out to LA. I got this job lined up. We got this house lined up. And then we get there and we find out, well, the job's not exactly guaranteed anymore. And the house that we had lined up, there's a squatter in it. So we have to find a new house. Oh, and Brian has to be out of his house on Friday because his condo lease is up.
Oh, no.
And so within a week, I had to re-interview for the job, go out on other job interviews, go and look at houses. And that was like Monday. And then by Friday, I had that job again. We found a house, and we were all good.
Now, why wasn't the job kind of permanently available? If they offered it to you?
I had interviewed with one team who was stuck on Speed Racer. And so that team was supposed to transfer from Speed Racer to Curious Case of Benjamin Button. But because Speed Racer got extended, another team came in, and I didn't interview with that team.
Gotcha.
So I had to interview with the new team and kind of do that. And it wasn't that I felt like they sort of said hey, we kind of promised this kid a job, but pick whoever you want. I still had to go in there and earn it. And just because I knew Brian, it was just ability to get my foot in the door. Once you get your foot in the door, you know how it is. It's you have to sell yourself.
Yeah.
And then once you get in, you get, you move around and you find your own way through it. But that was my way in. And then my original plan was stay 5 years, get some good credits, maybe work on a couple of movies and sort of get that experience, and then come back to Massachusetts and pick up in the film industry here and try to get in something.
How long did you stay?
I stayed there for 17 years.
Yeah.
And found my groove and found a home in Los Angeles, and worked 8 years in feature animation, switched to live action.
So you started as a PA in animation,
Yeah.
but because this is the first time I've gotten to talk to anybody about this, but like, okay, so you start as a PA, you're getting Chinese food, etc. Is there ever a point where somebody is walking you through like, the logistics of, oh, we're going to, animate the features on this guy's face and like maybe giving you a chance to kind of step in? Did you end up going into the computer aspect of it?
No, I mean, with VFX, like in that side of it, that was like true additional VFX. And when Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons, this was the team that was turning Brad Pitt into a 70, 80, and 9-year-old man on top of a smaller person, like the elderly man's body who was wearing like a green cap on set. And so we would bring Brad in and he would sit in the chair with all like the dots on his face. And my job was to guard the bathroom when he was shaving his beard to make sure nobody went in there and took a dump. And
nobody can be dumping.
Just kind of like
where Brad Pitt's going to be shaving.
Yeah, let him shave. He came in with this huge like ZZ Top beard, and Fincher was like, you're going to have to shave that, right? And so he goes to the thing and he shaves it, and he's got these huge mutton chops. And Fincher's like, the chops. And it was like that episode of The Simpsons where it's like, Mattingly, shave those sideburns. And it just like kept going back and forth. And then finally they painted his face green. They did a bunch of facial capture for the movie, and then they started working on the face. And I just got to, it was a very interesting time for me because I had just gotten to LA. My first couple of weeks, I'm meeting Dave Fincher, Brad Pitt. Dan Marino was an investor in the company, and he showed up a week before the Patriots went to the Super Bowl where they lost the undefeated season. And I had a Patriots hat on, and we were just talking football. Yeah. And I happened to wear 13 in football growing up because he was my favorite football player, and I loved Friday the 13th. So it was just sort of like this, what is going on in my life right now? This is so amazing. I mean,
coming from the East Coast, going to LA, and you're like already embedded in the dream, so to speak.
Yeah, and I was just sort of, this was the only time I was probably ever really living the dream because I had no responsibilities.
After that.
After that became real responsibility and like driving myself into dust. But it was just an exciting time, and it really just sort of like wowed me in the fact of like, this is the film business. This is cool. Like, look at the cool things we're doing. Like, I go and I get, drinks with my friend at lunch, and I walk in at him, and he's animating Jet Li's arm as it cracks, lava fills in, and he's like making it happen. Yeah, and that's my buddy. And I'm like, hey, what's up, Brian? Let's go you want to go down and grab some hot dogs and get drunk down on Venice Beach and then come back to work? And they're like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
And it was a cool lifestyle. And so that job lasted only so long. I ended up shifting into commercial PA, where I moved into something that was a little bit more substantial, which was the Vault.
Which was where?
This was at a place called Radium Real Effects.
No, what did you just say? Did you say the Vault?
Yeah, so I was in the Vault. So this is back in the day when we didn't have FTP servers, or we were just starting to have FTP servers, and everything was transferred on tape. And
gotcha.
All of the VFX that we would have done in the big flame suites, they would get produced on tape. They would come to me. I would label the tapes of what the project was, where it was going to the agency, whether it was shipping to New York or whether it was shipping to San Francisco, or if the agency was in St. Louis or Chicago, wherever it was. I was in charge of getting it out that night, overnighting it, and making sure it got to the people that it needed to be. We also kept something like this, like a film library of all the jobs that they had done, and I had to keep them in order. And sometimes if we had a job with Target and we had a bunch of assets on one of the tapes that we can reuse, well, we have to go into the Vault, grab that tape, bring it out, digitize it, bring it in, and kind of do all that stuff. So I was basically just kind of running and gunning and doing that, taking care of the studio space. We had been purchased by that company, Real Effects. I was working for a company called Radium, which was the commercial side. Real Effects was also at a commercial side, but they were more focused on feature animation service work. So they were working with Warner Brothers and like Sony on Open Season 2. So they were doing a lot of the animation for the films that major studios weren't giving to their A teams. They were subbing things out, giving them scenes and stuff like that. Eventually, Real Effects did the Warner Brothers shorts for Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner when they went into 3D. So that was Real Effects. And that was sort of them really testing their boundaries in the world of animation. And eventually they came to the conclusion that they wanted to make their own feature animated film. Now, I had been there at the time probably a year and a half, working in that division. We moved into this new building in Santa Monica on Colorado. It was like this beautiful brand new building. And, it was just, it was a really cool experience. We're doing commercials for Toyota and Target and all these big Taco Bell. I remember them, going back and forth about the color of the cheese and all that stuff. And just the whole time I'm just a sponge, watching how things are made, watching how things are getting done. I wouldn't say I was like super invested in VFX in one way or another, but it was awesome being in reviews, sort of taking notes sometimes and seeing the types of notes that would be given about how to fix a certain thing, what, the discussions that were happening between a VFX lead and David Fincher about why they can't quite get the wrinkle under the eye to look the right way and how they're going to fix it and how many more times can they really go around in this shot before they move on to the next one? What's a trailer shot? This trailer shot's going to get done by this time. And sort of understanding that vibe of what it's like to make a film, of always chasing all of these deadlines and always trying to get things done. And there's never really enough time. And you can never really quite get it right, but can you get it close enough? And sort of seeing that and it sort of permeate the other thing. But what I really wanted to know was, how do movies get made? Like, we know how to make movies, we can set up films, but like, where's that moment where like you see it grow? And that was the cool thing that happened to me early in my career, was when Real Effects wanted to get into animation. They started a film. They were going to bring in a team to do it. And when they were looking for coordinators to take notes in the meetings, all the coordinators were booked up. And so I ran into the business development office and I was like, listen, I heard there's an animated film coming in and I need to be a part of it. Like, I need to be a part of something story-driven, something that there's going to be people writing actual characters, like none of this commercial stuff. Like, I want to be in storytelling.
And when was this, if you don't mind? So, you start with Curious Case, and then this opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, so I mean,
how
would say,
many
like,
years
I was on
talking?
Curious Case for, like, 4 or 5 months because it was just kind of finishing out the back end. And then I ended up getting this job for the commercials, just a little bit more long-term. And there were, like, connections through Digital Domain that got me over there. And so I was probably doing that for about a year, doing the Vault PA thing and just kind of, working my way up through the team and doing what I can, like, here and there, and looking for opportunities to do whatever I can.
So it's not too far into your career as it stands so far, where it's like you're going into this room being like, no, I need to be on this.
Yeah, well, I think it was like sort of like I had worked at the studio for a year. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. When that opportunity came up and they were looking for somebody, I was like, I want to do this.
What did you want to do? Can you define that for me?
Yeah, I wanted to direct movies.
Yeah.
I wanted to work and direct a Friday the 13th movie. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
I wanted to get all the experience I needed to walk into a room one day and say, I can direct a Friday the 13th movie. Here are my credentials. Let me do it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know how I was going to get there. I was just following the path wherever it led. And I just thought that it would be really cool to sit in a room with a writer and a director and other people who were going to come in and watch them pitch movies and write the script and do all of this stuff.
Be a good learning experience.
Be an amazing learning experience. And so I ended up getting, I got a short-term position as like the note PA, just to go in, take notes, and that's all I do. I don't say a word. Notes on whatever the meeting was, whatever they were going to have. I didn't know what was. Just record the notes and just everything they say, take it down, organize it, and give it to them. And the meetings ended up being for a film that ended up being called Freebirds, but at the time it was called Turkeys. Okay. And so the movie Turkeys, about two turkeys that discover a time machine, go back to the first Thanksgiving and take turkey off the menu.
Okay.
The two writers, one was David Stern. He worked with Steven Schwartz on Broadway. He was the writer of Open Season 2, and he did a bunch of work in animation. The other writer was John Strauss, who wrote Something About Mary. So Peter Farrelly shout out and, local RI people. But John was an amazingly accomplished writer himself. The director was Ash Brannon. So he was one of the founding animators at Pixar. He was the animator who did Woody in Toy Story 1. And then he directed Toy Story 2 as a co-director, and then he directed Surf's Up. And won a Golden Globe. And then he was working at DreamWorks for a while. Whatever show he was on didn't go through, and so then he came over and became the director of Turkeys at the time. And then the producer was Real Effects at the time, and then the other person who was in the room that day was Luke Wilson, who I didn't know was coming in. And the reason why Luke was in the room is because the guy who owned the company, Real Effects, is a guy named Tom Karksotis. He was also the owner of Fossil Watches. And so he lives in Maui, and his two neighbors are Owen Wilson and Woody Harrelson. And they're best friends in real life, and they had never been in a movie together. So Tom said, I love this turkey movie idea. The only way I'll do it is if Owen and Woody get to be your lead characters.
Okay.
Yeah, put a gun to my head and make me get two A-list actors as my two lead actors to do this thing.
Great voices, too.
Great voices. Obviously have some, at the time, Lightning McQueen with Owen. He's one of the most recognizable animated, voices in the world.
Yeah.
And so to have him as our lead, as Reggie the Pardoned Turkey, was going to be amazing. And so all that film was that log line. And I got to sit down, and then from the moment of like, here's the log line, what's the story? Watch them start to slowly sow those seeds over time. And I'm talking about 3 years pass by the time this film actually gets
Holy
made.
shit. Wow. Okay.
And I go from, so in that first span, I would say I was with them for about 3 months before we had like a full outline. And they were going to have to do deals to actually write the script. They were going to bring on some storyboard artists early to help with some of the development of the ideas. And they had to get that greenlit. They eventually did get it greenlit. And when it was greenlit, I was supposed to go back to the story pit, or not the story pit, the PA pit at the time, as it was called. And I was going to go back to the vault. But I had spent those 3 months building a rapport with everybody in that room and coming through with delivering good notes. When I did speak up, it was because I spent all night working on the notes and noticed something. Something might have been off. Something might have been off in continuity. Something might have been off on character. And bringing it up at the right moment to say, hey, guys, I noticed this. Do we need to fix any of this? Do I need to make any additional notes or anything like that? And just being reliable and catching things like that, they started to sort of throw me a little bit more leeway to kind of speak up at certain times. And before I knew it, it was just sort of like hanging out in the room like this.
Cool.
Like, hey guys, what's going on? Like, what did you guys do this weekend? How are you kids? And all
Yeah,
that
you
stuff.
didn't feel like you were just the guy in the corner with the notebook. You
No.
felt like, okay.
I wasn't the guy like, don't look him in the eyes, don't look him in the eyes. It was just totally, it was Ash, John, and Dave and Luke are coming in. What's up, Luke? How you doing, bro? Like, and it's so, and again, that living the dream side of it of like, I can't believe that this is my life. This is so cool. And I looked forward to every like Tuesday and Thursday that they would come in. It was like my break from everything else I was doing at the studio. And when they said I had to go back to the vault pit, I took a swing and I went to Ash, and who I developed a really good relationship with. And I said, Ash, do you like working with me? And he was like, yeah, man, you're great. I was like, I just want to let you know that when it comes time to actually go forward with the film, they're going to put one of the coordinators. I'm going back to the PA pit. He's like, no way. He's like, you've just been doing all that work. Why would they give it to someone else? And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything, but if someone were to say that they wanted me as the coordinator, and
I wouldn't hate that.
I wouldn't hate that. And he was like, I got you. And he literally just walked out of the room and went and did it.
Hell yeah.
And I was the first hire on the movie, the first official hire before they signed all their deals for directing and writing, because that took way more time. For me to come in and sign my life away on the dotted line for like a little bit more than what I was making then was easy for them to put together. And I did it. And I ended up becoming the director's assistant, the writer's assistant, the story coordinator, and the editorial coordinator all as one person.
Wow.
Without realizing it. I didn't realize that's what I signed up for. But this was it was a $35 million movie at the time. It ended up finishing as a $70 million movie. But it was a small team. They were starting it from scratch. This wasn't DreamWorks where they have a coordinator and a PA and maybe 2 PAs for each department. I was going to be running the story team, the editorial team, and working with Ash and the writers. And, when Luke would come in and we would pitch, and, I ended up being Woody Harrelson's voice double for the reels. So I got to go into the booth and record all of his lines before we brought Woody in. And so it was me and Ash playing the lead characters. And so we got this rapport in the booth where we would be the 2 characters and act them all out. And we did like 3 or 4 movies worth of voice recordings just to get the animatic up. And it was the process of sitting with them, hearing the core idea, watch that get turned into a script page, watch that script page get handed over to a storyboard artist, watch that storyboard artist expand those ideas. On the story team, you had people like Will Finn, who was a director at Disney and DreamWorks, Carolyn Gare. She was a director at Disney, longtime storyboard artist. Floyd Norman, who literally storyboarded for Walt Disney. There was a guy named Johnny Rice who directed the new Beavis and Butthead movie, and he directed the episode. He directed a bunch of Rick and Morty's, but the one where the dog gets his balls cut off, he directed that episode, and he was a storyboard artist on this. So can you imagine, like, those minds are all lined up down in a row.
And you get to be right in the center.
And I get to be in the center of all those conversations about when they get those pages and they get launched, they push back on the page and say, well, why are we doing this? Or I got a joke for this. And they're expanding the pages from there. And then I got to get those pages, break them down, those storyboards, get those off to editorial to a certain way. And the people who work in editorial had worked on films like The Lion King and bunch of DreamWorks stuff, and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and one of them had cut a Friday the 13th trailer back in like Friday the 13th, had cut a Friday the 13th Part 2 trailer back in like the 1980s. Like, that's how long they had been working.
Yeah.
And every single person was somebody over those 3 years that I had sat down with for long, like we'd be there long nights.
And they probably just gave you all the information, stories and
tips and tricks, different things to think about. And I was such a story hound, and I found out that I was pretty good at it. And people would listen. Like, if I had an idea, it wasn't like, oh, he's going to pitch again. It was like, okay, yeah, what do you got? Like people would lean in and be like, Vinny, help me. That became who I became as a coordinator. Was like I would come in and I'd be like, hey, how you doing on stuff? He's like, well, I'm kind of stuck on this note and I don't really get it. And I'd be able to like, well, we're in the room, this is what Ash was kind of saying about it and what he's really going for. Do you need me to go get him or can we work through it? And then sort of working people around those ideas and like those moments of when an artist wouldn't get what was going on, either being able to fill that gap for Ash or go get Ash and understand what wasn't being fulfilled. The crazy thing that happened with that movie halfway through was that I watched what it was like to build a movie just trying to get the idea correct and just trying to get it up on reels and kind of do that stuff, which is hard enough as it is.
Yeah,
and
never
then
mind casting it,
never mind the political side of it.
Yeah.
So the political side of what's going on in the studio and the fact that, Real Effects was a Dallas company. They wanted to make an animated feature. All of the work is being done in Los Angeles. We did all this work, and now you're not letting us work on the thing that we wanted to make. And so there's this little bit of internal rivalry that started happening between Dallas and Los Angeles, and it was something that got so out of hand that people started losing jobs. Eventually, Ash was let go because they were butting heads about certain things about the films, the story in the film. The writers were let go at one point. We actually brought on Craig Mazin, the writer of Last of Us and Chernobyl and all. And actually at the time he was most known for doing Hangover 2 because he had come on and did the write for that. And so he came on for like 8 months. And I got to hang out in a room with Craig Mazin as he pitched the story with Ash and then with the second director that came in, Jimmy Hayward, who was another Pixar animator who directed Horton Hears a Who. And then he was coming back and doing this. And he had his own style of direction. He had his own style of storytelling. Ash had this very like indie, heartfelt, really, story-driven type storytelling technique. And it wasn't that Jimmy wasn't about heart, but he had an ambling big sci-fi vision. And it was watching those two people with different visions tell the same story and going over the same story over and over again and watch this film get made countless times. That in my head about like how to bring movies together, how to keep track of things through 40 different sequences, characters, lines of dialogue, things that needed to be happening. I, started seeing how shots were covered and how we would translate like what live action would be into animation and vice versa. But the things you can do in animation, which you can't do in live action, the things that have to be thought about in animation that don't have to be thought about in live action, or at least not anymore. I mean, everything's so VFX, it's basically an animated movie. But it was like I was a sponge waiting for something to soak in. And this movie, as crazy as it was, Two Turkeys Discover a Time Machine, it taught me, it was my master's class in
like
filmmaking.
Somebody literally just, you take the sponge metaphor and you just put you at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, yeah, no. And I just soaked it all up. And by the time I was done, on the next movie I got to work on with Ash was called Rock Dog. And so Ash had started a new movie after that. I went and worked with him and we tried to take this idea that we had when we were at Real Effects about like, we don't need all of this. We just need a few people and quiet just to get the reels done. If we can get rid of sort of the upper management and we can get rid of all these different extenuous things that take away from what actually needs to be done is somebody needs to go in and make a good movie. We got a chance to do that. And we were working for this company called Mandu Pictures. And we were in a live work loft in Venice, California, like right near the Venice Circle, 2 blocks from the beach. Would walk down to Ground Floor Coffee and get, or Groundworks out there, Ground Floor out here. Groundworks, go get some coffee, walk on the beach in the morning, and then come in, and it was literally just a live work loft. So upstairs was like an apartment, and that's where we were. And, Ash was up there, and I was up there as the PM. I was just a production manager, and we had 2 producers, and we had 3 storyboard artists, 2 editors, and a small art team. That was it. And then the rest of the team was in China. And the film was owned by a Chinese rock star who had written this something called The Tibetan Rock Dog, which was a graphic novel that he had released. He'd written a couple of them. And we were trying to sort of Americanize it, Westernize it in a way.
With just it being Rock Dog.
Just being Rock Dog. And it used to be called Tibetan Rock Dog, too. We were just trying to get a story that was a little bit more on par for kids. Like in the graphic novel, one of the main characters' dads like ODs from like heroin in the first 9 pages.
Might be heavy for a 5-year-old or like, an 11-year-old.
So they wanted something a little bit more heartfelt. They picked the perfect person in Ash to come in and do that. Prior to that, it had been at like 3 or 4 other studios, and they had spent a ton of money. They couldn't get it developed. And, big studios that have big overhead. And we just sort of took it as this small little indie group. and we just said, we're going to get the reels up. And once the reels up and the reels are locked, you can take it into animation and you can make it. And the process it took us to make turkeys was about 3 years. And in this, we did it about half the time.
Oh, wow.
And at one point, which was really cool, Lee Winnell from Insidious and
Saw and
everything that he does, he's one of my favorite directors, but he actually came into the studio one day because he was making an animated movie with another company.
Okay.
And he had heard about what we were doing, and I don't know how that came about. But when we did bump into each other and he turned to me, he said, this is the way movies need to be made. He's like, you guys are just out here doing it. Like nobody's asking you questions or, interrupting your day. You're just coming to work, focusing on the movie and doing that. And when you have something to show, you show it. We're like, yeah. He's like, man, the thing I'm on right now, they want to get like all these A-list directors. They want to do these big deals. They want to make it a $200 million movie. And all I want to do is get in and just do the boards. I'm like, yeah, that's how we're doing it. And so it was something I picked up early on in my career. And I saw the challenge that even my heroes, the people who I had worked with, like people who I didn't even mention on Freebirds, like I got to work with Scott Mosier from Clerks and Mallrats and everything that he's done ever since. It's funny because Scott Mosier he directed the most recent Grinch movie for Illumination, and the guy who I worked with on Freebirds was the editor on that. So it's cool to see how that kind of permeates and see where people go in their things after you in their careers after you meet with them. Another guy, Steve Scolante, who's sort of like a name you probably haven't heard before, but he's worked on everything big that you've ever seen.
And he's worked with you on your projects.
Yeah, he's actually supported me on my project. Steve was one of the original EPs on Never Hike Alone. He was a mentor to me when he came in and worked at Real Effects for a little bit. He was only there for maybe 6 or 7 months, but he had a big impact. And he, just the way he conducts business and the way that he treats people. I mean, because he really treats his crews like real people. He's not shoving people through a meat grinder. This isn't like herding cattle and just getting stuff done. Like he really thinks ahead. He thinks about the quality of life that people are having when they're on sets and things like that.
Quality of life in the film industry. That's funny.
I know. And that's why I think that so many people love that guy, is because he actually does give an effort to better everyone's lives on the project and listens to everybody. I mean, I would come in and I would tell him things, because I needed, because there were things going on politically, because I'd be in rooms where like one set of executives would be talking about another set of executives, somebody's job's on the line, and I kind of go into him and be like, I'm hearing all this stuff. Like, what do I do? Like,
yeah.
What do I do with this information? Or like, do you need to know this information? Because they're making political moves. And since you're in this position, I think you need to know what's going on in your show. And it wasn't to like get anybody in trouble, but it was just like, I just don't want anything to derail anything. I just want to keep moving forward. I don't want to get distracted by dumb stuff. And so I think that, we bonded pretty. Freebirds was a little bit of a traumatic experience in some different ways and shapes and forms. But at that time, when I was in my 20s, like I was like, bring it on. I'll stay here all night and watch renders. I don't care. Like this is the best experience.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I had to get up one time at like 4 a.m. No, it wasn't 4 a.m. I had to get there early, but they were doing a test record with Ash. He flew to Hawaii to do a test record with Owen and Woody for one of the early test pieces. Owen and Woody literally paddleboarded in to the hut that was that was in Hawaii, came in their wetsuits, did the whole recording in their wetsuits, and then got back on their boards and paddled back out to their houses.
That's awesome.
And I watched it all. I was supposed to go for that trip, but I ended up watching through a Zoom chat, which sucked. I was like, I want to go. But no, so it was like, so I was kind of gaining all that experience. Rock Dog sort of finished up. We got the reels done. We ended up, actually went back to Real Effects, which was really, really funny. It sort of had trouble getting out of the gates for some stuff that happened in China with, I can't remember what happened, but it was like Tencent and another company didn't agree. And so the release got messed up.
Okay.
And then it sort of got this soft launch, but I think people have found it in time. Freebirds too. I mean, I see people posting about Freebirds all the time now, which makes me laugh because it was such a big part of my life early on. And kids are like wild for it. Like YouTube, like major like theories about how the film was written and why certain jokes are in the movie. And I'm like going through it. I'm like, this is crazy.
You're like, if you only knew.
If you only knew. And I did. I actually wrote on it. I was like, if you guys ever want to know anything that ever happened in this movie, I'm literally the walking encyclopedia for everything that happened on this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I was sort of like, after Rock Dog,
because again, remind me of the timeline here. So we're talking three years.
Yeah, so I think
Freebirds,
it's like
and then another year and a half.
2012, I think I wrapped up on Freebirds.
Mm-hmm.
Then I worked on Rock Dog from 2013 to 2014.
Okay.
And then for a brief moment, I was going to go make a movie with Luke Wilson in Mexico.
Okay.
And then that got shelved because...
In what capacity were you...
It was going to be my first live action project, and I was his assistant.
Okay.
And so again, like met Luke during Freebirds. We actually got to work on a character together, and his character ended up getting cut out of the movie. But one of my first writing assignments was sneaking off with Luke and coming up with like 12 gags that this time traveling astronaut who the turkey stole his glory of being the first time traveler ever. Like these turkeys stole it. So now he's in one of the prototype pods trying to go back in time to like stop the turkeys, but the prototypes don't work. They keep sending him to the wrong time.
Okay.
And so we were coming up with all these wrong time gags for this character called Buck McDonald.
Yeah.
And Luke did this like Buford T. Justice voice. He's like, "Our little science." And he's just like this rootin' tootin' cowboy, like the real effects of it all. And we loved that character, and it ended up being too funny to a certain degree where like you'd rather be with Buck than the actual characters in the movie, so they ended up taking him out.
Okay.
But Luke and I had a good rapport. Luke did the lead voice for Rock Dog. So he came on as the lead for us because he had a good rapport with Ash too. And so we had a good working relationship throughout that film, doing all the voice. Again, I did some of the lead scratch voice for that for Luke until he stepped in and did his voice. There was actually a day that Luke couldn't show up. So I got to do all of Luke's stuff with J.K. Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just me and J.K. Simmons in a booth going back and forth for the opening lines of the movie and stuff
That's
like
fun.
that. And it was, and it's just really cool. And it's just you get thrown into these fire pits, like, and you just have to come out the other side, like, with your head still intact. And it was good. And so we always had like these good experiences. And yeah, so Luke and I were supposed to make that movie. So getting back to that, insurance ended up pulling out last minute, and I was looking for a job. And I ended up getting hooked up with a company that was run by a woman by the name of Sandra Ravens and Penny Finkelman Cox, who was her business partner. And they had been together, working together since days in Disney, where they worked for Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Okay.
Went with Katzenberg to help build DreamWorks. In fact, Sandy, I think, designed half of the way that DreamWorks looks. And then Sandy left there, started Sony Pictures Animation, was there for a while. And then they were working with this new startup called Original Force, and they were looking for some coordination help. So I was like, that sounds like something I can hop into and just kind of turn my brain off and take a department and go. And while I was there, had a really great relationship with Sandy. A project came up that's not on my resume because it never got made, but it was this project called QQ Speed, which was supposed to be like a $5 million animated movie for Tencent, which they had these line of video games that they were going to make movies for. And they gave us $2.5 million to go and develop a set of story reels and a script and all that stuff. And they had a story that they wanted to make, and they needed someone to watch the project. And since I had the experience with Rock Dog and coming out of my experience with Freebirds and everything like that, Sandy was like, this might be a good thing for you to like take on your own, like produce it all on your own. Like, I'll help you out, we'll give you the things that you need, but let's see what you can do. And, for about a year and a half.
It's a hell of a thing to put on your lap, huh?
I mean, I was excited.
Like in a good way, of course.
In a great way. I mean, where I wanted to go at that point was I was really starting to fall in love with animation, and I could see myself being in animation a long time if I got to be creative. And I got to be a little creative on this, but this is where I really learned about the logistics of things, because Sandy's one of the best line producers to ever do it. And she sat me down with the budget and the master document and said, here's how it works. And we went cell by cell, explained everything to me, and just sort of watched over my back. And I went from doing my first waterfall schedule and my first line budget to, updating it every week. Then all of a sudden I got the hang of it, and I'm doing the whole studio schedule. And like, here's our waterfall schedule for the next 5 years if we follow through with all these projects. And here's how we roll this team onto that team. Once we finish this project, we roll them onto that project.
Wow. Holy
and,
shit.
we have to have this developed by this time, and yada, yada, yada. And starting to figure that out, because I started to learn, like in animation, it's very, you're moving piece by piece, and the blocks all move in order. Once you finish one thing, it moves on to the next department, and it keeps going in a line until it's done. But a thing that was kind of pulling at me during this time was that I didn't have any experience in live action. I moved to Los Angeles to work in live action, and I had spent maybe 3 or 4 days on a real set. I mean, I hadn't been out there for like a real set. I'd seen some commercial stuff. I saw some VFX stuff, and, I'd worked on some indie movies, but it wasn't like being on the real thing. And I was sort of lamenting for the fact of like, I think I might get stuck in animation, and it's been almost 6-7 years, and I have 3 credits.
Sure.
My friends are all working on live action stuff, so they're getting like 3-4 credits like a month. Like they're working on this, they're working on that, they're getting this. And I was sort of having FOMO for that. I mean, I loved what I was doing, but the project I was on, I did my best to kind of steer it in the right direction. When you're working with a client, you can only go so far as they let you. They kept changing creative over and over again. At this time, this is around 2014, 2015, 2016. Like actually 2015, 2016 is where this is. I think this was around the time that Rhythm and Hughes went out of business. Rhythm and Hughes was the company that did the visual effects for Life of Pi, won an Oscar, and then went out of business.
Sure. Okay.
And so the big detriment in the VFX industry at that time, and probably still is that everyone's underbidding each other. And then when you run out of money to keep going over on a shot, the studio says, well, just keep going, spend your own money, and we'll just pay you on the box office what we get back from this movie when it becomes a huge hit. And they never
sounds
get
like
paid.
nightmare promise.
Yeah, and so these nightmare promises, you know, they're trying to, you know, obviously they did amazing work. They won an Oscar, but it didn't save them from going out of business. And other, you know, so we looked at this project and said, listen, this is going to run out of money in so many months. Like, we can either give them an overage report and ask for more money, or we can start finding people other jobs and trying to shift stuff around. And, you know, we ended up doing the latter. We actually found jobs for other people because we knew that it was going to ramp down, and they really didn't know what they wanted, and they didn't really understand the animation pipeline in a way that they thought they did. And it's not like, you know, I think that there was some assumptions along the way that, like, you could just take, you know, game animatic stuff and just turn that into a full feature film, which you can't. What to do with the story. Again, like, working with companies from the East and like China and you know, all the Asian countries, they have a different style of storytelling. So you have American filmmakers trying to tell story that's supposed to resonate with a Chinese audience and Chinese, you know, vendors, and they don't understand the story as much, and they want to see certain things, and they want certain symbolism, and that's stuff that we don't really understand. So I saw that, like, lost in translation, sort of. We think we're doing what they think they do, but there's not there. And it was just sort of like, why are we fighting this battle? If they're not going to put more money into it and they have a certain way they want to do it, they should probably just pull it back and do it themselves.
Sure.
Like, I'm not going to force this down anyone's throat. Like, why should we? We have this other project we're working on, which was called Duck, Duck, Goose. It was the main film with Jim Gaffigan and a bunch of other great people. The director, Chris, was one of the writers of the original and producers of not Toy Story, Surf's Up, had worked with Ash.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of had the A movie, and we were like the B movie that was going to be a direct-to-video type thing. And so I was ready to shift over and kind of work on that. And I was working on Duck, Duck, Goose. And at the time, what was happening was I was starting to get that itch for live action. And so I started doing things like 48-hour film festivals. And so I was like, got together with a team of people that I met from, like, some of them I met at Muay Thai, and other I met kind of out in the world, and kind of made friends, and like other, like, little indie stuff that I'd worked on. We built a team, and we did a film called The Red Room. We shot it at my apartment, had a blast doing it. And it was like, oh man, this is like what I want to do. It was like my first time I ever got to direct something. Like, I had.
So it's like all these years later, you're finally like getting your hands-on experience, and it kind of just like sparks something in you.
Yeah, and I was like, when I was working in the animation industry, I could literally go home all night and work on a pitch for something, and come in and go to Ash and be like, I got an idea for a scene. You ready? Pitch the whole thing out. And he'd be like, I love it. Let's put it in. Or, it doesn't really fit. And I just had the opportunity to do that. So for years, I was like seeing what I could get to, like, can I come up with an idea that's good enough to be in the movie? It wasn't that I just wanted to operate on that level. I wanted to be out there and, like, play the pickup game and keep up with everybody. You know what I mean?
So over those years, you're also getting, like you said, you're getting experience, you know, pitching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, everything in animation is pitching.
And you're getting some of the best people in the industry to be like, good idea. Bad idea.
Yeah, and not like throw me out of the room for it. And I had been in rooms with people who were higher up in the company that got asked to leave the meetings, and after they said never let that guy back in the room ever again. I knew, and like I was just really trying to be like and a lot of people would tell me, like, when I was doing it too, like when I was at that time, I had people pull me aside and sort of be like, "You're very lucky
that you haven't gotten thrown out of the room."
Not that, but just that you're having this experience to step in at this role and to see you. Like, they were watching me go through this entire process and watching me grow as sort of like kind of growing out of the shell of like a kid who just got out of college, it's LA, baby, to like, all right, so when we talk about the character arc of this character, like, we really need to get into their headspace. You know what I mean? And like really dive into it, because I was just so passionate about it. And the passion resonated out. And you know, a lot of the people who I met in animation are still helping me to this day. Like Carolyn Gare, who I mentioned before, was one of the producers from the first Never Hike Alone. She let me stay at her house throughout the entire production of Never Hike Alone 2, literally living in one of her guest rooms, because her kids moved out, and so she had some space. But these people who, you know, when you work on a film, you bond with people, especially you're on it for 3 years. And Carolyn and I, every year I worked in animation, wherever I went, Carolyn went, which was really cool. Like, Carolyn and Ash got along really well, so she followed him to Rock Dog. And then when I went to Original Force, I had sort of reached out to Carolyn and I was like, hey, they're looking for a head of story on this project. You got to come and be the head of story because you're the best head of story I know. She came up and do it. She ended up getting her own show. That show didn't end up going through. But again, it was just like, it was always fun working with those people and kind of putting that together. And at the same time, while I was sort of trying to figure out, but at that time, I was always pitching ideas. And it would be like, I wonder if my idea will get in. But I never really had the chance to be like, okay, these are all of my ideas on the page and I'm going to put them out there for other people to see. And that 48-hour film project was the first time I ever got to do that. It was literally a pull of the hat was whether I was going to direct or not. It was if it was horror or comedy or something else. Not horror, it was horror or action. I was going to direct. If it was drama or comedy or something else, the girls who were the other part of the team were going to direct. They felt like horror, we can't handle, everything else we can. So if we get horror, Vinny, it's on you. And of course, we got horror. And I was like, I got an idea. Let's do this. And it was my first time ever like running through that like myself. I had done some other work that led to like other work doing like first AD work on other shorts. Sort of picked up on how to do that.
Just slowly you're getting yourself involved in live action.
Yeah, and I'm totally green at it at this point. Like I wouldn't like at that point in time I wouldn't be able to tell you what a crafty table is.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, what? What is that?
Damn, that's so interesting.
That's how much I knew about live action at the time.
Yeah, that's crazy that you're that far into the industry. I mean, you're talking about a defining 7 years that is a career.
Yeah.
And you don't know what a crafty table is.
Yeah,
you don't have that on-set experience.
Because we were always in the office.
Yeah.
And we were always on, like, and that's why I was like, I want to know what's out there. I want to know what the hell a key grip does because I have no clue what the hell a key grip is.
What the fuck is a gaffer?
What is it? Who is the best boy? Are they having weddings on set? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know more about it. And what I did know is I knew how to put storyboards together. I knew how to put shots together. I knew how to tell story. I knew all of these different things. I just needed to know how, and I know how an animated film came together.
Yeah, but I would imagine it's so much different.
How do these departments work? And the difference being like animation's everything's linear. Like one department finishes it, that sequence moves on to the next one, and it gets all the way broken down to each shot. On every shot in a live action, it's all departments coming together to hold the fucking glue together for just long enough to get that one shot and then break apart and set up the next one.
Was that a mindfuck for you, or did you actually?
Yeah. No, it was definitely, I mean, I got it. I understood, and I loved it because I was able to sort of when I look at the frame now, I go back to my animation days and I just think about the way that we treated the frame there and the way that we filled it and the way the composition was, because we were literally dragging in like, oh, we want the grass to go this high. We want the tree to be this tall, and sort of, I just kind of think about elements of that. Like I break it down in a 3D element and sort of build it how I want it. Or when I'm looking through the viewfinder, it's sort of, I look for those things. And it's like, that's how I kind of pick up a lot of like things with like people's silhouettes and the way that they shape themselves on screen. And, the different, just different things that you can do. That was everything so visual in animation. And I loved that about it. We were always trying to pull dialogue out of the movie. We weren't trying to throw much of it in. And I feel like a lot of times in live action, I see, especially with young directors, like there's just a lot of dialogue.
They rely on it.
Oh man, they just say everything.
Yeah.
Say it all.
Say it all. Get
Make
it all
sure
out
everyone
there.
gets every single detail.
Yeah.
And, the art of subtlety was something that I learned in animation. It was something that I started with. And so when I started with Never Hike Alone, the whole thing was sort of this experiment of like, by the time I'm done doing this, I want to know a lot more about this process and I want to get better at it. At the time, digital filmmaking was sort of just coming on the cusp of cameras being able to handle HD, never mind 4K.
What was Never Hike Alone? Was it?
My God, like 12 different cameras. So it started on, like I had my Canon 5D Mark II with Magic Lantern on it.
Yep.
And then we had a Sony AS7 II, which was our main camera for a while. We shot with Zeiss lenses. And then renting those Zeiss lenses, there was the guy who was renting from this guy, Evan Butka, who had a red camera, and he was like, man, dude, like stuff you guys are shooting is like great. And he had an AS7 that we used to use too, and he would digitize all the footage for us, or just like kind of collect all the footage for us when we were done, and he would look at what we shot, and he'd be like, where the hell are you guys shooting? This is amazing. Can I come up with my red? And we're like, bring it up. So we brought his Red Epic, and so we started shooting with that. I mean, we shot with an FX7.
So that's all mixed into this one film.
Yeah, because I got to kind of go back to the beginning of this, because it's Never Hike Alone was supposed to be a 5-minute short. Okay. It was an idea that started because I said, like, the reason why I moved to Los Angeles was to work on a Friday the 13th movie. I missed the boat on the one that was made in 2009. It was made in Texas anyway. And I didn't have any connections really then to figure that out. I didn't know where Bay Pictures was, and I called them all the time asking if they were hiring, and they always told me no.
Fuck off, kid.
Yeah, literally. And then it was right there in Colorado. They're right there at the end of the street. And then my idea was, well, you know what? Like, I'm making PM money now. Like, this is when I was in animation. I was like, I can actually like make my own costume. I've never made my own costume before. And I saw all these people on like social media doing cosplay, and like the idea of doing cosplay never really dawned on me. It was like, oh, you can build like a Halloween costume, but like, no, wait, you can actually do something and go out and like take photos and like pretend. And I had seen some fan films, and I'd seen other people doing it, and they didn't look great because they were shot with, you know, VHS cameras and, you know, mini DV, and they're not going to look cinematic. The sound's going to be off. The lighting's going to be bad. And so that's what fan films were for a time. And then I'm trying to remember the name of the filmmaker, but he did something called like Power Rangers, like Dark Verse or something like that. It had like Katie Sackhoff as like the Yellow Ranger.
Okay.
And it was gritty. And I remember being like, wait, is this really Power Rangers? Is this a fan film? Because it looked real. I mean, it's the same guy, I think, who directed Dread.
Okay.
And then he also did another one with Thomas Jane for Punisher called Dirty Laundry. And so these were like not official films, but these were like high level studio produced fan films that looked great, and they were online. They were getting a lot of attention. And I was like, there hasn't been a Friday the 13th in I don't know how many years. Like at that time, maybe 6 or 7 years. They've just canceled 3 different versions of it in the last 4 years. I bet you that if we made a costume that looked cool, made it look cinematic, and got it online and did like a 5-minute short, it would get a lot of views. I think a lot of people would watch it. I think people are hungry for this content. But we got to come up with a cool new look, and we got to do all this stuff. So I spent maybe a year like buying a bunch of stuff off eBay and trying to try different masks. Eventually, I worked with a company called Composite Effects to build my own mask, like from scratch, like my own style.
Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees mask.
Jason Voorhees mask, because I just wanted to make this Friday the 13th short. And I had this idea of like a guy's out on a trail. He finds Camp Crystal Lake. He runs into Jason. He tries to get away. Jason kills him and drags him back into the forest. And that's it. We shot a version of this, which came out very bad, very poorly. It was a bad costume. It was the guy, we shot it on a DSLR. It was actually a version before the actual version where we shot it all on a DSLR and like I think a Mark III 5D. We didn't have a monitor, so we couldn't tell when stuff was in focus. We were literally focusing on the lens. It just did not turn out great. The hood I had kept popping out of the shirt. It just didn't look right. But what it got me was 3 really solid stills, like 3 banging stills. That was like, okay, in this moment, in this single moment, this looks like we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use
that
this.
Counts for a lot.
That counts for a lot. So I'm going to use this to convince people to find other people that I think are going to help me get this closer to looking like this all the time.
Okay.
How do we make this look like this all the time? And not like this, but more like this. And that's when I met this guy named Chris Thellis. I was working with another guy. He was a DP. Kyle Klein was my producer, a buddy who I worked with, met through this other filmmaker named Mike Bonamo. We worked together on a film called Assassins, where I got to play a hobo who got shot. And I met Kyle through that, so we became friends. He worked for me in all these different companies, and he was like my producer. Chris had a friend of his who worked with him, John Cabrera, who was like his like assistant gaffer. They sort of just did everything, camera, lighting together.
Okay.
And most of it was just bounce shields. Like really, it was just like bounce.
It's amazing what you
cards.
can do with the bounce shield, bounce card. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were just mostly working with that, a lot of natural light. Eventually we brought in another guy by the name of JD Martz, who I did Muay Thai with and was just looking for something to do. And he was a filmmaker, and he had a Sony FX7 that we would use. You know, I had a GoPro and a drone, and John had a drone. And so we sort of like collected all this gear and said, let's go see what we can do. And I had all these places out in San Bernardino National Forest, Big Bear. So outside of Big Bear, down in a town called Angeles Oaks, I'd found a set of cabins, and I knew where I wanted to shoot. I'd already done I'd gone up there in like 2012 and found these cabins and said, one day I'm making a Friday the 13th there. And came back up 3 years later or 4 years later with these guys, and we started working on this stuff. You know, kind of working on angles, working on the new costume. I ended up hiring this guy named Andrew Lady to play the lead hiker. Andrew was my production assistant on Rock Dog.
Okay.
His father-in-law was the producer, David Miller. And so that's where I met Andrew. And one day we got to talking, and I was like, what kind of movies do you like? He's like, I love horror movies, man. And I was like, me too. And he looks like a dead ringer for Jax from Sons of Anarchy. What's the name of it?
Yeah.
Charlie Hunnam. He's like a poor man's Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah. I can see that.
I'd say Army Hammer, but I don't think that would work well anymore.
Apparently he's making a comeback, so I don't know. But yeah.
We'll see. So he, good looking guy. In fact, he was most at that time known for being a cover model on romance novels. Okay. So he actually had a little follow of himself. And I just kept thinking, I'm like,
what a hell of a gig that must be, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's great. And it's so, and he was like dude's a stud. He's like a surfer, long blonde hair. I mean, you see him in the movies. Like, he's just like, and that's who he is. Like, he's just personable. And so it was sort of like, all right, I'm going to take his personality. I'm going to craft it into this character. We're going to do this trailer.
Still with the intention at this point of it being a
5 minutes.
Okay.
And so we came up with the idea for a trailer that would it was like day 2 and a beautiful one at that. I found this trail, went to Camp Crystal Lake. Here comes Jason. Will he survive? Was basically the idea. It was about a minute and a half of a trailer. We released it online, and it was like, yay. Like, people liked it, but it wasn't like a resounding like, holy crap, what is this? But
is that the trailer you ended up using for the GoFundMe too?
The first one, the one that failed. There was a second trailer that we did that was a little bit more extensive, that had more footage into it. And I'll get to that in a second. But what it did catch the attention of Friday the 13th franchise.com. And as a nerd of Friday the 13th, who spent a lot of time in their forums talking about Friday the 13th, it was cool to get recognized by the top fan website to be like, hey, fan film to look out for. But what changed really happened was, as we were wrapping up this shoot of like shooting this trailer, we had never met the people who lived in these cabins. They were always empty. I thought that they were deserted, but they were actually just summer cabins that were family owned. And you could only be there from like, I think, March or May until like September, because you'll literally die out there if you don't stay during the summer. And they were talking to us, they're like, why are you guys shooting around here? I'm like, look at these cabins. They look beautiful. They look just like Camp Crystal Lake. They're like, there's a camp down the road, right? And there's like 1 million camps on this road. And I'm like, yeah, I know there's a camp down the road, but those cost money. And they're like, no, there's an abandoned camp down the road. Like completely, like since like the 80s, like no one's been up there. It's all there. Like, you guys should go check it out. You'd probably be good for your movie. And I was like, oh, all right. Like, that sounds cool. Where is it? And he busts out this like legit map, not like Google Maps, like pulled out a map, said, here we are, here it is. And it said college camp. I went, okay, cool. And I took a picture of it with my phone, and we went home, we cut the trailer. I went to my brother's graduation in Louisiana. And, the whole time I'm like, college camp. College, what does this place look like? And in my head, everything in Los Angeles that's abandoned is covered in graffiti and burnt to a crisp. Okay. It's like, in my head, I'm like, your cabins are perfect, sir. There is nothing that could be better than this. And so I'm looking it up. I can't find anything on college camp. Nothing has ever been called college camp. I look at the map on Google Maps. There's nothing there that says that there's a camp. There's no road. There's no house. There's nothing. And so then I go to satellite view, and I punch in all the way into each square, going square by square by square. And everything's covered up by trees except for one building. I'm like, oh, there's a building there. That's cool. That must be what he's talking about. And so I find like a path through the trees. I'm like, oh, here's the old road. And I kind of followed it back to the highway, and I marched it on the highway, and it was literally to a mile marker. And so we drove up one weekend. We found the mile marker, pull off the road. And if you didn't know the mile marker was there and this road was there, you'd never know it was there. Pull down, there's a gate. So we pull up to the gate thinking we're going to get up and hoof it, walk up to the gate. The only thing holding it together is a nut and a bolt.
Pull that nut.
Pull the nut, pull the boat, open it up, drove through, closed the gate, closed the nut to make sure it didn't look like we were going up there. And so we drive up this hill. And apparently buses used to drive up this hill. It was this thin dirt road that sidewind around the mountain, crossed a little creek, went up this like steep climb with like a sheer drop off to the side where if like you fell off the side, the car would roll down into a ditch. Yeah. And so we go up this hill, and I'm thinking like, are we going to, what is going to be up here? And we come around the corner, and fully intact building 1, fully intact building 2, fully intact main cabin. And we were like, holy shit, this is like a full-on set. Like, this is a whole camp. And so we got out of the camp, we started running around, and I think all in all, there were like 8 to 10 cabins. Okay. Like, there were 8 kids' cabins. There was one main cabin. There was the nurse's cabin, an additional cabin, and some bathrooms and a pool. And so there wasn't a lake, but there was enough to sort of like, well, we can shoot this out and kind of cheat with the lake, and we'll figure that out later.
We'll figure that out later. We've got a set.
So now it went from this idea that was like, the guy's going to walk around Camp Crystal Lake, see a sign, and then see Jason and be like, he's going to go into the buildings now. And we had the idea of like, he's a YouTube vlogger. We were taking sort of inspiration from 127 Hours and The Martian, where you had a traditional narrative that a character could break up the narrative with a confessional to the audience.
I actually really like the way you guys did it in the final feature.
I mean, it was literally studying the fastest man on Earth speech from The Martian. It was sort of like, here's my template. I'm going to have 3 cameras set up, always clocking him from a different area, and then he's always got his thing. So when he's talking, we can cut in and out. We can see him pull it out, and we see him put it away. And that's the thing that, that sort of is our mechanism for how these scenes will work. And then in between, we're going to be on his show. Like we're going to go with him. We're going to experience what it's like to be one of his viewers. But then when he puts the camera away, we get some, and at the time, the way I was thinking, because when I'm not a huge found footage guy, I was just like, then we get to do the real stuff. Then we get to make everything look pretty. And it was a balance of like the raw, visceral found footage. And what I loved about it was in the moments where I needed it, I was able to put the camera in front of the main character and put the audience in front of him. And so now the audience is the first person who has to walk through the door instead of the main character. And he's pushing you through. And so it sort of created this tension with people who watch it for the first time, not knowing when Jason's going to show up. And the movie sort of came together out of order, where it was, okay, now that he's found the camp, what would he find? And so my thought was, and at the time, so career sort of like check-in, at this point I'm working on season 1 of The Rookie.
Okay.
And I'm working on set, and we have a police officer. And actually, no, I wasn't working on The Rookie at this point. Scratch that. I wasn't in that side of it yet, because this is a question I had later. I got confirmed. I ended up working on The Rookie. Chip, who was the police advisor, told me this, was confirmed, was that if there's a crime scene and no one owns the property, it's never going to get cleaned up. Like, they'll take the body out, but the crime scene tape's going to stay up, all the evidence is going to stay up, all the blood's going to stay up on the walls. And so I played with this idea that, like, no one ever went back to Camp Crystal Lake. No one ever went back. So all the original crime scenes from the original movie are still up. So let's rebuild all the crime scenes. And as he tours us through Camp Crystal Lake, we'll stop at each crime scene and we'll bring people back to the original film a little bit, but still be in modern times and sort of nostalgically look back at this series. And what is it really? What is it really if you come into this real world and you had to explain what happened here to somebody in the modern time? What would it sound like? And what I didn't realize what I was doing is that I was introducing a whole new audience, all these people on YouTube and all these people that had sort of never really gotten into Friday the 13th, who would watch the old movies, and the movies are very formula based. This was definitely way out of the formula. This wasn't a body count. You know, they had never done found footage before, and they had never portrayed Jason in this way, in a way either. So there was a lot of risk that I was taking, but it opened up Friday the 13th to a new audience. And so I didn't realize I was doing it this time. I was just sort of like following this thing of like, what would I ever want to do if I could go to Camp Crystal Lake? Like, I want to look around. I want to walk around and see everything. So I'm going to show people, like, I'm going to bring them on a tour of Camp Crystal Lake. This is going to be a lot of fun. And then it came down to doing, you know, the fight stuff. And, you know, when we found that door to nowhere on the 2nd story floor, I was like, we got to throw somebody out of this.
Yeah.
I got to find a stunt person. And so here we go into the producing world of like, well, we got to go find stunt people. Remember that 48-hour film festival thing? There was this great short called like Turkageddon or something like that. And there was this stunt team that put it together where this turkey was attacking and killing everybody, and they were doing high falls and all these stunts. And I remember bumping into them and thinking they were really, really nice. So I was like, I think we know people who are, then we ended up working on a film called Athena together, me and this guy, Brian Forrest. And so when I needed a stunt guy, I called up Brian. I said, hey, man, we're going to do this thing. I want to put it together. He ended up putting me in touch with his stunt cord, who was a little bit more experienced than he was, a woman by the name of Jessica Aaron Bennett. And we built our stunt team. And so slowly but surely, we had the camera department, we had a stunt team, we needed to get VFX. And so I was recommended to one person and then another person. And then finally, when we got to shoot, we actually got somebody to show up on set. It was this girl by the name of Kelsey Burke, who is like I can't believe that we got her, because she literally went from like us to like the new Swamp Thing. Like literally just like her career just shot off after she was done with us. And she's a good friend of mine, did amazing work, but we had like a top level VFX artist, VFX on set, practical. We had somebody who could do real stunts. I had a cinematographer who understood cinema and understood how to make things look cinematic. And we had the tools to do it, just enough digital tools to make no money look like a lot more money. And so we used that original trailer to launch our first Kickstarter. We came about $20,000 short of what we wanted. I wanted to raise 40. I think we actually got to 29, but all that money goes back. But I convinced 4 or 5 people from that campaign who had each given like between $2,000 and $5,000. I said, do you need the like you came in pretty hard and you're about this project. Like if we pool all this money and I put some money in and my family put some money in, I think we can get up to like 20 grand. Like that'd be enough to like get going. Like let's shoot as much as we can. And so we took that money, we went up into the mountains, and literally I was working in animation. We would get into a van on Friday. We would drive up to Big Bear, stay in an Airbnb, go out to the camp, shoot 2 days, shoot 2 nights, come up with ideas. A lot of the times we were just testing out cameras, testing out the suit, testing out different ways in and out of the building, filming like, okay, you walk into here, maybe you come out of here. And then I would take all that footage and like recut it, different footpaths that he would take and different things, and the way the light looked in the afternoon versus in the morning, and where we could shoot in certain places, what we could see and what we shouldn't see. You know, how many times that we would see a fucking van in the back of a shot and be like, why did we not move the van?
Yeah.
And so we spent probably 3 months just doing that,
Wow.
of just putting that together and not spending any money. And then once we figured out what we knew we wanted to shoot, we got a small team. We spent a pretty good amount of money to go up into the forest. We hired a bunch of extra people, stayed at Airbnbs, trucked everybody up to the camp, and went through the process of like, you know, that first time that you realize everyone got to set and no one picked up water. And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, like, so someone's going to run 45 minutes to the store and 45 minutes back to come back with water. And by the time there, everyone's dead and everyone's pissed off.
Yeah.
And so the first time we went through it, I would say that it was trial by fire. We got a lot of great footage. We got some bad footage. But by the time we got done shooting that major thing, I had most of the major fight scenes taken care of and came up with some really cool shots. And then from there, it was, we're going to go up on the weekend and we're going to get little bits and pieces. So everything that's just him walking around the camp, looking at one little, you know, room, we can get that with our group of 5. Like anytime there's fighting and there's big stunts and we need lights at night, we need to bring up the 4Ks and blast the forest, like that's when we bring a team up. And so there were maybe 2 weekends of doing that, and the rest of it was just 5 people going up into the woods, shooting the tent scene here, shooting walking through the woods here, going up in the hills of Malibu, the no trespassing scene, all that type of stuff, building that over time. We built a second trailer in January of 2016, and this was like launching it, I believe, on a Friday the 13th in January. And sort of going to relaunch the project on crowdfunding. We went to Indiegogo saying, well, if we don't raise it, at least we'll get this. I think that time we asked for $13,000. We raised another $20,000. It gave us the money to finish the film. At the time, we ended up getting put into contact with a guy by the name of Tom Matthews. And now, if you're not a fan of Friday the 13th or horror movies and you don't know who Tom Matthews is, Tom Matthews was in Return of the Living Dead. He played Freddy, like the main guy in Unita Supply, who gets blasted with the stuff and turns into a zombie at the end. He's like, I can smell your brains.
Yeah.
And then he plays Tommy Jarvis in Friday the 13th Part 6, my favorite Friday the 13th. One of our producers is a guy named Barry J, who happens to own Barry's Boot Camp. And he's a huge Friday the 13th fan. And somehow, some way, he got in contact with Tom and asked him to go to dinner with him and just kind of do it as like a meet and greet. Just as, I just want to spend some time with you, ask you about your movie career. You know, I'm not a weirdo. I just want to get to know you. And during that time, he said, listen, I'm producing this fan film. Would you want to be in it? And Tom is like, hadn't acted in a long time, and like, fan film? Are you kidding me? Like, this is how far I've fallen in my career. He's like, well, you know, whatever. And he showed him our first trailer. And he was like, well, that's interesting. It's interesting. It actually looks kind of good.
You got my attention.
Got my attention. So I met Tom at a restaurant in Pacific Palisades, and I showed him the second trailer with all the brand new footage, this new intro that I created, all this new stunt footage, all this brand new Jason footage. And he was like, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
What do I got to do? Like, what do I want? And I was like, well, Tom, I've already filmed half of a movie, so I'm not going to like go back and rewrite and put you on a bunch of days. But I have this idea for the scene at the end. I think if you were a cameo at the end of the movie, you would serve much better purpose than me trying to jam your story into this, because your story needs so much more work, needs so much more attention, and it would take away from what we're doing here. And plus, I don't have the money to tell that story. But I can put you on for one day, and I know exactly what to do with you. And I'll tell you what, I'm not even going to tell anybody that I signed you. The idea is nobody finds out about this until Friday the 13th. When this movie debuts, that's when people find out about it, and I guarantee you it will put people over the moon. If they're feeling one way or a way about the film, when they get to you, you're going to be the thing that wins them over. And he was like, I'm in. And so we ended up going back and forth on the scene. There was one where he was supposed to die, and we were like, fans are going to kill me. So we did another one where everybody lived, and I was like, fans are going to kill me. And then we came up with one where Jason was able to attack and he was able to get away. And that became the end of the movie. And so it was a race to the finish line to get the film done. at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Like, no one, I was going to take it to YouTube, you know what I mean? And if I could get it on a big screen, that would have been cool. The other thing that happened that same January is that they were supposed to make a Friday the 13th that year, and it didn't happen. They actually, Breck Eisner's version of it, and they got canned. They were supposed to film it in Georgia. They actually started painting the cabins and everything and cut it in January. And this slot opened up on Friday the 13th in October in 2017. And it was like, this is your shot. Like, open net. You got the full court. You just have to dribble it down and lay it up. And the rest will work itself out. Figure it out. And I didn't know how I was going to get there, but everything that I was learning, everything that I had learned from animation and everything that I had learned trial by fire on set, sort of like I was now better prepared, went into the spring. We shot all spring, shot all summer. I happen to be playing Friday the 13th, the video game, in which I am a backer. I'm very sad to have seen that it has since perished. But I was playing a video game, and somebody asked me what I want to do with the film, and I said, if I could pick one film festival to debut at, it would be a film festival called the Telluride Horror Show, because they're debuting on Friday the 13th this year, and I went to the Stanley Film Festival, and I read about it, and I've always wanted to go. And somebody in the chat said, did someone say Telluride Horror Show? And I said, yeah, it's a cool festival in Colorado. And he goes, I know, I work for it. What's your movie? And we zapped into the meeting, zapped into the game, and Jason started chasing us around, and I'm pitching Never Hike Alone to this guy who I've never met before, saying, I got this movie, and we're doing a Friday the 13th fan film, and it's sort of about a hiker, and if you like 127 hours, and, all this stuff, and we think it's going to be a little bit different, and I'd love to, premiere it on Friday the 13th. And he was like, that actually sounds like a pretty cool idea. Like, Jason ends up killing me. We ended up back in the lobby, and he's like, when you're done and you're ready, send us a copy of it. Here's my email. I took down his email. We worked on the film. We sent them a rough cut, which half of it didn't even have sound. Okay. And they wrote us back like a few days later and said, this rocks. Like, we were just going to show, Friday the 13th for the 15,000th time, but this is new, this is different, and this is good. Like, we're going to play it opening night, Friday the 13th in the Sheridan Opera House.
God damn.
Have it done. And we weren't done yet. And so we literally finished the movie October 11th, flew to Denver, drove to Telluride, handed them the hard drive, said, here it is, let's go. And didn't know what was going to happen. That night, I showed up to the theater that night and there was no one outside. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. I traveled all this way, I did all this work, and no one cares. And one of the volunteers stepped out, and I said, where is everybody? And they're like, oh, they're actually inside already. Like, they're watching the other movie, and then when that movie's done, we take everybody out, and then they have to come back in and re-enter. And I said, oh, okay. And so the film let out, and slowly but surely that line started to line up, and it went around the block, and it went down the street, and I was like, what the hell? And so I started like casually walking down the street. I'm like, what are you guys here to see? Like, oh, Never Hike Alone. It's a really cool thing. And they're like, looks like it's going to be cool. Looks like it's going to be cool. And I was like, oh, cool. Here's a sticker. And and started doing that and just sort of taking the temperature. And I was like, all right, people seem pretty excited. And I met some press people, and people were sort of wondering about it. And then it debuted. And and after that, it was like surreal. I mean, that is probably the most like, I had worked on all those movies. I had been to I went to the premiere of Free Birds with Owen Wilson, Woody Harrelson. I was there on the red carpet with everybody. It was a lot of fun. It was really rewarding to see those movies come out. But the feeling of Never Hike Alone going out, being resoundingly well-liked by all the critics, getting a lot of good write-ups, getting a lot of press. And after all that hard work and basically throwing my career in the trash, and I'll get back to that in a second, and just starting over again in this way was sort of like the greatest feeling I've ever had. I was like, I couldn't believe it. It all worked out. Like, all that struggle, all that pain, all the times it didn't work, all the times it didn't cut, and we worked through and we got it. We followed it through, and standing up on that stage and presenting that film was like, I was like, I got to keep doing this. This is great.
It was an adrenaline rush.
It was an adrenaline rush, but it was also just like watching people react to it, seeing some of the reactions of people. Like, Tom has people come up to him. They were like, when I saw you in that movie, I jumped out of my couch, man. I was like crying. I was like, couldn't believe that Tommy's back. And it's like, for a fan base that's sort of been mistreated, I would say since 1993, and maybe even before that, depending on how old school of a fan you are, like, it felt good to give Friday the 13th fans a win. Like, people genuinely it cheered people up. It gave people a reason to go back and watch the franchise again. It gives them something new to watch after they watch the franchise again. It gives them something to show their kids that they can actually watch that doesn't have excessive nudity throughout of it. And it's just sort of, it was cool to see this opportunity, and it sort of taught me something about, like, all I really wanted to do was direct a movie and work on a Friday the 13th. And then the harder I worked in the industry, the further away I got from those goals. And the more I worked on my own goals and got to them, the further I got away from the industry, but the more fulfilled I was.
Now, I got to ask, at the risk of cutting you off.
No, I mean, I'll go on forever.
Where does the obsession or love or passion, I don't know how you personally would describe it, but why Friday the 13th?
I grew up in Westport, Massachusetts, which is a small like farm town, a lot of woods. I grew up on the Watuppa Pond, and when I saw one of my first Friday the 13th, it was part 6 where he gets stuck in the lake at the end of the movie, and I became absolutely petrified because I thought that was my lake, and I thought that Jason was off my dock. And so when I would literally swim as a kid, like a 5 or 6-year-old who didn't know any better, or maybe I was 7 or 8 at this time, when I would swim out in the water, I always thought Jason was in the water. When I was playing with my friends in the woods, I thought Jason was out in the woods. We had like a little outdoor patio that was screened in at our house, and I used to watch horror movies out there on VHS with the screen door. And if it was a storm night, even better. I had like the storm in the background with the rain. I'd be watching Friday the 13th, and I'd have nightmares that Jason would come around the corner and kick in the screen door and just kill me. And I used to have dreams where I would be following Jason around, like, you know, Pete and the Dragon, like following him around Camp Crystal Lake and like wondering what he does when he's not in the movies and like all that. I was obsessed. I was like, who is this guy? What is that stuff?
Yeah.
But it really came down to like walking down the aisle and seeing the hockey mask on the VHS tapes. I was just like sucked in. I was like, what is this? I must know what this is. Who is this man?
So something I always like to ask everybody when they come on is like, you know, what's your hero's journey moment? Would you say, you know, Friday the 13th part 6 was like, oh, like I want to be in movies. I want to do this. I want to figure this out.
Actually, it would be the finale to Pee-wee's Big Adventure. When he's driving across the Warner Brothers lot with Godzilla and the Cadillac and Santa. And I was like, where is that?
That's awesome.
Where is this place?
Yeah, what is this? Yeah.
King Ghidorah's flying around on the strings, and then you got God. Like, I was just like, wait, they go from stage to stage to stage, and all these movies are being made at the same time. How surreal is that for me in 2018 after all of this? And I'm actually walking down that street in Warner Brothers and actually looking at it like, oh, there's Batman this, and there's that, and like, there's Lucifer, and here we are, you know, with our set. And it was just, that was really the moment I was like, I do want to work in film. What about Friday the 13th was about the visual effects. The things they would do in those movies for the visual effects scores and getting me into horror and all that stuff was
pretty
like,
awesome.
That's a job?
Yeah.
Like, what? Okay, I got to figure out how to do this. And I never really wanted to get into VFX. I just wanted to tell stories. I wanted these things. I wanted to, like, if I could think of something in my head, I wanted to make it happen. And so that's really this journey I've been on ever since then. And
it seems to have worked out. I mean,
not too bad.
Not too bad. So you created Whomp Stomp. Was that leading up to Never Hike Alone? Was that after Never Hike Alone?
Yeah, Whomp Stomp came from like my my PlayStation handle. My name was like Whompa Stompa, and it's based on a cheat code from Star Wars Rebels that if you typed Wampa Stompa into the passwords, you would generate into the map as a Wampa, the ice creature from Hoth, and you would start smashing stormtroopers. It was like the coolest thing. And I always loved Wampa Stompa. Like, that was such a funny name. And so Wampa Stompa eventually became Whomp Stomp. And then I had Whomp Stomp on Instagram, and I was doing a lot of photography. And then when I started moving into doing more shorts and films, I just went Whomp Stomp Films, and it stuck. And it was just supposed to be about me having big feet, and everywhere I walk, it's like Whomp Stomp. No, yeah, I got size 13s. But everywhere I walk and I have flat feet, like, you hear me stomping around, like Whomp Stomp, Whomp Stomp, Whomp Stomp. So it...
and now in a way, the internet is hearing you stomp around. And I mean that as a compliment. I mean, you went on to do Never Hike Alone, and then to my understanding, there are 3 of them now. So there's Never Hike Alone 2, there's Never Hike Alone in the Snow.
Yep.
And was there anything else?
Yeah, there's a music video called Disappear, which is actually a part of the story that we did as a way to raise money for Never Hike in the Snow. And so,
And how do you, this is something that I'm interested in, like, maybe I just don't understand the concept of a fan film, but like, how are you able to, because you're using Jason Voorhees in the movie, you're using his image, his name, you're using Camp Crystal Lake, you're using an established IP. How do you go ahead and make that into all these movies that are huge fucking hits, by the way? I mean, we're talking like 4, 5, 6 million views for each on YouTube. You've got a following of 90,000. I mean, can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, at first,
not to like throw you under the car or anything. But it's just fascinating that you're able to take the movie that you love, the series that you love, and now make your own series.
Well, I mean, obviously it came off of seeing some other Friday the 13th fan films in my time. I think they were mostly made like late 2000s, early 2010s. So I knew that they existed and I knew that they happened. And then I did research on fan films. There's a very famous case called Star Trek Axanar, which was a Star Trek fan film that raised $1.2 million and then got sued by CBS. And they were like, whoa, drawing a line here. So like, you know, they had made, like I said, like the Dark Power Rangers, they had done Dirty Laundry. There's another one, Batman Dead End, I think. And then this team that was putting together these Star Trek fan films, this Axanar project was like their third or fourth, or maybe even more than that or less. I can't remember, but all I know is that they got sued. And it started this big war. Like even J.J. Abrams got involved, and he was like, leave the fan filmmakers alone. They're a fan base. Let them do whatever they want. And CBS is like, well, this is our intellectual property. What if they tell a story that we want to tell? They're bringing back people from the actual franchise. What if we want to bring them back and put them in things? You know, we own their rights. And they were really rigid about it. And so after some back and forth, they were like, you know, there is the fair use of it all. I think it's the 1978 or 1973 or 1978 Fair Use Act that sort of allows sort of like works of art that, you know, reflect things as long as it's not being sold type stuff, as long as it's just made free in public, is sort of the way it goes. But the rules that they came out of this were don't raise more than $50,000.
Okay.
Don't bring in alumni. Shouldn't be longer than 25 minutes. And, you know, you can't say this is a Friday the 13th. I can't be like Friday the 13th part 13. I have to say a fan film. Like I didn't even name, and so like I was really cautious about all that stuff. I was like, I'm going to call it Never Hike Alone, a Friday the 13th fan film. You can't miss that. I'm going to release it for free online. Like I'm going to take it to a film festival. I want to put it up on a big screen, but if someone wants to stay home that night and watch it on YouTube, they can watch it there too. They don't have to back the film on the Kickstarter to see the movie. The movie, they're going to see it no matter what. They're getting a free movie. Like if they don't back, they only are going to back it if they want to see it happen. And because what are you really saying? A bunch of people can get it together and pool their money to make something happen. And all they're getting in return is just something back as their investment. You know, we're not giving them money. We're not going in on a distribution deal to say, okay, now I took this Never Hike Alone and I sold it to a foreign distributor and I'm making $10,000 every time it screens over there. I can't do that. I can't sell it for distribution. I have to make it free and available for people to see. And I sort of just, or not me, but all fan filmmakers need to follow sort of that as their guiding line.
So that's kind of the loophole.
That's, yeah, the loophole. And that's, those are the guidelines. But
guidelines rather.
But that's not a guarantee, because if you try to make a Godzilla fan film, Toho's going to step in and stop you right away. It depends on the rights holders. Okay. So as long as the rights holders want to let you go forward with something, they can let you do it. And eventually I ended up getting to meet Shawn Cunningham. I met Victor Miller. I've met a lot of people in the Friday the 13th franchise. And they
love what you do?
And they love what we do.
Hell yeah.
And they already had enough legal issues that they were going through. I don't think they wanted to get tossed up and messing with the fan films. And I think since Never Hike Alone, the rate of Friday the 13th fan films that started hitting YouTube after that grew exponentially. And in this time when Friday the 13th was dead in the water with a lot of legal issues that it was going through because the rights were up for sort of not negotiation, but the original writer was trying to reclaim the rights. There was a big case about it. There was no new Friday the 13th material going over. The fans were stepping up and creating their own movies. And so we had Never Hike Alone and the Jason Risings, and you know, there was Fall of Camp Blood and Vengeance and Roseblood and Voorhees and what else? Here Comes the Night, and all these different things that started to come up of all these different people coming up with their own wild theories about, you know, who Jason was and what Jason was. And it was all these conversations that we had on years, like all these forum nerds that sort of had different ideas about what Jason was. Instead of now talking about it, we were going out and making it happen. And the Friday the 13th fan base was funding it. They were backing different campaigns. And you know, along the way, I mean, like I said, like I'm not supposed to have alumni and it's supposed to be no longer than 25 minutes. Never Hike Alone is 50 minutes long and it has Tom Matthews at the end of it. You know, skirting around the law, I was like, I didn't use him to advertise.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know? I didn't try to make money with him.
But how do you get around with it for like Never Hike Alone 2? Because that's like a proper hour sum.
Yeah, so we bring back other alumni and all of those things. And so what
you brought back the alumni.
Yeah, and we raised $125,000 for Snow.
So you're like breaking all the guidelines.
Slowly but surely we started pushing the envelope because I noticed that nobody came after us. And then I started meeting people and they didn't seem to really care. And I was just like, you know what? Why fight it? let's just see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, our fan base is growing. Like, we have these ideas. We've always wanted to see Jason in the snow. Like, that'd be great. And I did try to take it to the studios. I actually got to pitch at Warner Brothers the idea of doing a Friday the 13th animated series.
What did they say?
They loved it.
But because of where it stands in limbo right now with all the...
There was a break in between where they settled the lawsuit, and Victor Miller won. And so things were starting to shift over. And so people were starting to get stuff into production. Warner Bros. Animation was looking for projects. The head of story on Freebirds that I worked with, this guy named Jeffrey Biancalana, was a head of development and story for Warner Bros. Animation at the time and knew about the Never Hike Alone stuff. And I told him that this idea for it. He's like, come in and just pitch it and let's see what happens. I got to pitch to Warner Bros. Animation. I brought all the Friday the 13th comics with me and I spread them out all over the table to let them see all the different artwork. And I said, imagine a series where you didn't have to follow a narrative. It was like Black Mirror meets Friday the 13th. And you just have to tell 8 different stories about 8 different periods of time. So if you want to do Jason X2 or Jason in Hell, or you wanted to explore something about Jason's past or do a Pamela story, or if I wanted to do a Never Hike Alone and be in that universe, we just go off on our own separate journeys. We make 8 different movies and we come back with a pizza with 8 different slices, because that's what Friday the 13th is. If you watch 1 through 12, very rarely do you get the same movie twice. You could say like the first 5 are really in one sort of formula. 6 through 8 have their own formula. 9's its own movie. Freddy vs. Jason's its own movie. Jason X is its own movie. The remake's its own kind of taste. If you ask a Friday the 13th fan what their favorite is, they're going to give you a different movie and a different reason for why they love that movie. So why try to create one thing that's supposed to, you know, satiate this entire franchise? Give them 8 different things. They're going to love one episode. They're going to like it all, but they're going to love one.
Yeah.
And then they're going to buy that toy, and they're going to get other things that are going to support our ability to come back and make more of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to come up with
And
new
they loved
Jasons. And they loved it. And they were like, this is great. I ended up getting to pitch to the head of development. He loved it. And my next meeting was going to be with HBO Go. And then Shawn appealed the lawsuit. And they called me and they said, sorry, we can't go any further with this. And I said, well, as I told you, if this doesn't go any further, I'm going back to crowdfunding. I'm going to make them anyway. And they said, good luck.
We wish you the best.
We wish you the best.
You know, legally, there was nothing they could
Yeah, and
do.
there was just nothing we can do, and I got it. And we maintained contact over the years. I said, well, I'm just going to work on the next one. And if it comes around later on, it comes around later on. And that's when we went out and shot the Disappear music video in Flagstaff, Arizona. You know, just a very simple music video. The music at the end of the movie, the music that we use in there is by a guy named Trevor Vaughn, who's a musician that I've known since high school out of New Bedford, Massachusetts. We use his song at the end of Never Hike Alone, Another Soul. And that became a theme where every single film for Never Hike Alone has an end credit song that's done by Trevor from his folk library. Like
was he there the Saturday? I feel like I met him. Or I feel like
he
I
wasn't
know
there.
that name.
But Trevor's he's in hardcore bands. He does hardcore rap.
Yeah.
He does dance music, and he does folk. He does everything.
Okay.
But I love his folk music. And it's Disappear has this very, when you listen to the lyrics and you watch the music video to it, it's telling the story of Jason Voorhees without him really intending that to be the idea of what the song was about.
Yeah.
But when I paired it with Jason, and a lot of the themes that he writes about paired with Jason very well. And so I started just kind of coming up with all these different things. What does Jason do when there's not a movie happening? Just sitting around Camp Crystal Lake. People show up, he's got to kill them too. Is that really fulfilling for him? What happens when somebody when somebody gets killed in Camp Crystal Lake and they go and they disappear? What do the cops do? And that's what was Never Hike a Snow was about, was let's watch Jason kill somebody and get away with it. The one thing we've never seen. He always wins in every single movie. He always loses in every single movie. Let's see him win for once. Let's see how he gets away with it and how he's able to stay hidden for all these years to make it make sense that why he's still here. And then Never Hike Alone 2 was, well, if he's still out there, and in the first movie, Kyle MacLeod actually escapes and finally reveals the secret that Jason does exist and Tommy actually does see him, what is Tommy going to do about it now after all these years? And where has Tommy been? Yeah. Let's explore that story. Yeah. And so every time we would come up with one of those ideas, it was, okay, here's the idea. I'd write the script. Once I had an idea of I knew I could shoot it. I knew I had the resources for it and I could put it together. I would go to crowdfunding, raise the money. And, after doing one crowdfund and 2 crowdfunds, and then all of a sudden consulting on other people's crowdfunds, I started to get really good at it. And so I was able to help myself. I was able to help other people. And so the Jason Rising Project and Dylan's New Nightmare, we did an original film called Pathosis. And, a bunch of other projects that I've hopped on over the years of just collaborating with different people that started off as hey man, I love what you did with Never Hike Alone, and I saw you crowdfunding. Could you give me some help? To all of a sudden I'm on set with them. And we're talking about shot lists and how we're going to get it and how we're going to like, oh, you know what we could do if we shifted this way? Like we get this as the backdrop and like really trying, I think, in my opinion, I'm always trying to get, if I see someone with a great idea, I want them to get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I get to produce, that's really where I spend a lot of my energy is focusing on what they have, what sings about the project. Is there anything holding their project back? Like, for example, when I did the first Jason Rising project with that team and I saw their trailer and I saw everything they had, and they just had this kind of like not great graphic as like their title. And I was sort of like, guys, if you just literally redesign your logo, I bet you'll get like 10 times more people backing you. We went and redesigned the logo, did a little bit of graphic work on their campaign. Didn't change much after that. And they raised, I think, like $30,000-$40,000.
Oh, shit.
And they were able to go out and start making their movie. And it was like things like that. So
just like that small touch added so much legitimacy.
The little things, and then like, you know, helping, you know, there's a lot of things in crowdfunding where you can get caught up in like having too many perks, or like perks aren't, like you're not balancing out your spreadsheet. So like, yes, you're spending this to make it. People aren't buying a Blu-ray, they're backing the movie. For backing the movie at this rate, they're getting a gift that is a Blu-ray. They're not going to Walmart and buying a Blu-ray of your movie because you're not going to make enough in profit after that to then actually make your movie. You're going to spend it all making the Blu-ray. So
if you had any advice that you could give to somebody doing a crowdfunding, what would like the one key thing be?
Talk to somebody who's done it before.
Sure.
Talk to somebody who's done it before and sit down and take notes, because you do not want to go into this blind. You don't want to go in making assumptions, and you don't want to be stuck on the back end with a project that you can't deliver and fulfillments that you can't deliver as well. Because then when you go back again, no one's going to trust you. When you get through a crowdfunding process is such an intimate relationship with a bunch of people who are trusting you with their money, and there is no guarantee. Because it says right on the website, it's like, this might not even happen. You may throw $100 at this and you won't see, this movie will never get made. And I've seen some films crash and burn, never get made. Some films that had to completely drastically change their stories because franchise stepped in and told them they couldn't do something. There was like a Chucky fan film that was supposed to give out Chucky dolls. All those people that paid for Chucky dolls, they couldn't do it because they weren't allowed to sell the Chucky doll through the campaign. Yeah. So there were things like that. And those are the things you have to be careful of. And that's what I try to like coach people around. And so it really became what crowdfunding became. It's like, it's my outlet. It's my outlet for when I'm working on a major set, or if I'm working on a major production and I have to answer to a chain of command. There's a lot of people who have a say, and it's a very slow process. And like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you'll be lucky if you have a say. You know, you just got to kind of take what's dealt to you and kind of go with it, versus like being at the center of the circle. And every decision radiates out from everything that you do. Every time you change something on a page, it's going to radiate out through every single department. And so by going, you know, obviously having an understanding of like what it's like to be a PM and run a team. When I made Never Hike Alone, I actually had to make a choice in my animation career. I was offered a job to go to China for 3 months and teach coordinators how to organize sort of their teams a little bit better. And I was going to go out and work with everybody. I was going to get paid a pretty good amount of money, which meant that I was going to have to give up on making Never Hike Alone. This is like that halfway point where I made half the movie. I had to come back and do the other half. I just signed Tom Matthews, and I was going to have to walk away from it all. Or I was going to quit animation. I was going to focus full-time on a fan film I couldn't make money on and live off my savings for the next few months until I could get a job in live action and start to explore the live action things, because I was falling in love with it. And I took the year off. I lived off those savings. I made Never Hike Alone, and I started looking for jobs. And it was just very slow coming in. I was around a lot. I ended up being able to make some of the money back from that I had spent on Never Hike Alone by figuring out how to do Blu-rays. I figured out that loophole for how that works and how that could work. So that ended up paying off like what the film actually cost. I was able to pay that off with it and donate some of the money to a couple of charitable organizations and do some good with it.
What do you mean you were able to figure out Blu-rays, like putting Never Hike Alone onto Blu-rays?
Yeah, no, we have like a whole, we're doing a whole Blu-ray box set that's coming out this year. That's how far we've come. We went from like, I don't know if I can do this, to like, get the box set. Like,
really?
Yeah. And we figured out a way to make it work and how to do it and how to, I mean, basically, if you come and you back the campaign and you help something get made, like just to get it produced, I mean, we're not, you know, if 500 people come and request a Blu-ray, well, I'm not going to print 50,000 of them. I'm going to print 500 of them. or 550s just in case some of them break. And so it's really made to order. It's like you're buying a custom video of your wedding. Like you invested in this project. If you invest a little bit more, I can create this thing so you can keep it forever.
You should bring us some Blu-rays, or we should buy some Blu-rays.
That's what I was like, you know what? I realized I didn't bring a Blu-ray. We could have added it to the shelf. They're you know, and we get to build them more. So then I taught myself how to build a Blu-ray and how to put it all together. And what are the features going to be? What's this going to be? And it was a really cool experience because as a Friday the 13th fan, if you're into the series, every single Blu-ray or every single DVD or VHS
has
tape
like a making of
and behind the scenes and commentary and all these different things. And so we were really emulating everything that I was doing was like, this is what the franchise should be doing. Like every time they approach doing like home video, it should have this type of package in it. You know, they should have this type of, like for years, Friday the 13th would have the wrong Jason on the wrong cover. Like there's a Friday the 13th part 1 that's in neon green that has Jason on the cover and he has chains. And that has nothing to do with the first movie because Pamela's the killer and he's like a little boy in it. And it's like the people who are sort of like left in charge of what they're supposed to be doing with Friday the 13th aren't doing the greatest job with it.
Got lazy, got
now,
careless.
You got the box set up there, which looks beautiful. And, you know, shout out to Shout Factory. That's who did it, right?
I don't know. Shawn, who did it?
Yeah, Shout Factory. Shout out to Shout Factory. They did a beautiful job and that's what fans want. And that's what they deserve.
6. Okay. I'm going to have to give that one a watch tonight.
Yeah, 6 is awesome. Tommy McLaughlin, who's the director of that movie, is one of the first alumni to reach out to me. And he actually came to the LA premiere of Never Hike Alone.
Yeah.
And he became a good friend of mine, and we would go get breakfast at the Hollywood Diner in Hollywood, and we would just catch up on stuff. And he would tell me stories from like his day. I mean, he did so many horror movies back in the day and like TV movies and was teaching down the street. And he was like a hero of mine. You know, I got to meet Tom. He's a hero of mine. Vinny Guastafaro, who's in our movies, who plays the sheriff, is the deputy in part 6. Wherever the red dot go, you bang. He became our sheriff. And so I got to do a 3-hour conversation with Vinny Guastafaro. I said, like, if they let me make this Never Hike Alone series, this is what I see for Rick Cologne. And I pitched him out like the 3-film arc for Rick Cologne, and he loved it, and we became friends. I ended up following Vinny into his acting class and started, auditing the acting class and just sitting in as a director, watching him work with his actors so I could get better with working at actors.
Do you act?
Yeah, no, I played Jason in the movies. I've done some voice acting. That's me for half the time. Brian Forrest, the guy I mentioned before, is my stunt double. Jess was like, see, the thing is, Vin, if you get hurt, we lose an actor and a director. If Brian gets hurt, we lose an actor. You step in, you can take the place and you can do it. So let's just try to keep it safe as much as possible. And then when you feel like you need to get in there, get in there. And so we had a good balance of like certain acting parts of where I wanted Jason to be a certain way, or days where like we didn't have the big team, I would be in the costume. And days we really had to move and had a lot of setups. Brian, you're in the costume. I'll step in when I need to. But like, you got it today. The mask is yours. And we would work together to kind of figure it out and be a 2-man team throughout all 3 movies, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, it was, you know, as I was kind of doing the Whomp Stomp track, you know, I probably had about a year off from like real work. And then I slowly started to get work from Never Hike Alone, where I got to work on like Angie Tribeca for a couple of seasons, where I got to, a couple of episodes where I got to do like Firewatch. And so I was starting to get on like real live action sets and really starting to be like, okay, what am I missing? And it was something that I didn't mind doing because everyone was like, wait, you were a production manager, like line producer on this other movie. Why are you a PA on this live action film? I was like, because I know nothing about this stuff. I'm not going to walk in just because I have this credit doesn't mean I should be walking in and telling people what to do because I have no clue how any of this works. Like, I know what I can do on my set and what I would say to my people, but there's a whole different ballgame out here and I want to learn it. And so I want to start at the beginning and I want to learn it the right way. And they were like, all right, whatever. And so they threw me on Firewatch and I got to Firewatch a building while they were shooting halfway across. And I said, well,
now I know.
Now I know. Now I know everything.
I mean,
this town is mine.
I mean, you do know quite a bit. I mean, so you're back in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
What do you have to look forward to now? What are you working on that people can get excited about?
I mean, I think that the process of coming back to Massachusetts, it's me sort of picking up where I left off of Whomp Stomp Films, where I was in LA, and coming up with different original projects that I want to get down out here. I want to start luring all my friends from across the country to come and shoot out here and join us out here because
hell yeah, bring them over.
Yeah, no, I just think that like there's such a rich tapestry of different places to shoot in Massachusetts. There's a lot of talent. There's way more talent here now than there was when I left, and opportunity here now was when I left. So it's sort of a mixture of like getting caught up in that and just sort of bouncing from different projects, meeting different people, just like I did in LA, and sort of slowly but surely building a team out here. I've been slowly like nicknaming it like Whomp Stomp East. But those people that are like the first call of being like, all right, we got a project together. We're going to get there on this date. Like, can you commit to this day? And if you can't, you got anybody you can recommend, and let's go do it. I'm working on a project right now called No Problemo, which is like a short comedy, which has some like live action animation in it. It's my first ever like just straight comedy short.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that. There's another one called The Bonding, which is a horror film that I've been writing. It's starting as a short, but there is a feature, but I want to shoot the short first. It's a werewolf story.
Werewolves are back, man.
Werewolves are back.
Werewolves
No,
are
it's
back.
the time. There's another one called EMF that I've been working on with a producer by the name of Jeremy Brown that's very ghost huntery, which should be really fun. I'm attached to a feature that I can't legally talk about. And so there's lots of things going on behind the scenes. But I would say what brought me back to Massachusetts is actually a story that I could tell from when I worked on Chad Season 2.
Okay.
Chad Season 1 shot in Portland. Chad Season 2 shot in Los Angeles. And so I was on the Season 2. I was the first team PA for Season 2. And we were in the middle, and they brought down the entire camera team from Portland to work on the show because they liked working with them so much. And I was talking to ACAM one day, and I was just like, oh, you get a lot of work up in Portland? Like, I got buddies who work up there too. They don't do a lot of film work, but, you know, what do you do? And he's like, I don't do any film work in Portland.
No.
I was like, none? He's like, no. I was like, well, what do you do? He's like, I weld brewery tanks. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, 8, 9 months out of the year, I weld brewery tanks. And then my DP buddy calls me up, says he's got a show. We go do that for 4 or 5 months. I make bank. I go back. I weld brewery tanks. And I thought about where I was in my career and what I wanted to do. And it was like, wait, I said I was going to be out here for 5 years and move back and like figure it all out and come back with this thing. I'm like, and I was going to all these different film festivals around the country. And I was talking to filmmakers who was like, yeah, you know, I have like this regular job down at like Walmart. And, you know, I shoot with my friends on the weekend, and I made this awesome horror movie that we shot in my uncle's barn. And it looks just as good as anything else that's being shot anywhere else in the country. And I'm like, why am I paying a premium and working myself to death in a place where I don't really want to be and I miss home? Like, maybe I can risk not working in the industry for a little bit because I have my own thing with Whomp Stomp Films. I can always make films doing that. What I need to go find is my brewery welding job. I need to go find that job that pays my bills, that allows me to turn my brain off and make enough money to just get by. And then whatever I need for films, I'll take it to crowdfund. I'll get what I need. And one of these shorts, whether it's a $20,000 short or a $50,000 short, if I can raise more than that, that's great. But one of these things will be the thing that leads to the thing that leads to the thing, because that's how these things work out. You just got to keep making stuff.
Yeah.
So why am I going to keep running to these big sets, asking them for them to see me as I see myself, when I can just keep making it, and then somebody eventually will see something? And if not, I'll just keep making what I want, like working good hours and just taking my time and doing it at my own pace.
Well, we were kind of talking about this yesterday on the phone, but you said this, and I have been thinking about it since, but it's like a very punk way of existing in the film industry.
Yeah.
Where it's like, fuck the studios. I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to figure out a work-life balance that works for me. And I'm going to find an audience, and I'm going to make these really cool films, you know, and you're doing it.
Well, I mean, look at the way that content's being created today, and the way that, you know, eyes are being drawn away from the theater. Eyes are being, you know, they're trying to put everything in streaming, but even streaming, I think, is struggling to hold its own. And all these companies are struggling to make things that are hits because everyone's looking at YouTube and everyone's looking at TikTok, and they're looking at short little pieces. And so, you know,
if the series or the movies, if it's not supremely crafted, like, or if it's not right up my alley, like I rewatch Chernobyl like almost once every month. I just love that show. So like, other than that, like very little on streaming has my attention.
Anything that is 4-quadrant family generated, and this is something I learned all the way back to Real Effects, and what I really kind of saw what they were doing is that it was this company who had $35 million at first, and they wanted to compete with Pixar. So they were going for the Pixar audience, which is your 4-quadrant family audience that those films spend $200 to $250 million on, and that's who your competition is.
Define 4-quadrant. What do you mean?
4-quadrant means that it's meant for anybody, like everybody from children to old people. Like teenagers will love it. Your mom and your dad will love it. It's got a little adult humor in it, but it's for the kids. Sort of like, you know, like the Shreks of the world and the Pixar movies. They were like, Pixar movies were, you know, cartoons in one way, shape, or form. But when you really got under the surface of a Pixar movie, it would make you cry. Like the opening of Up, like had people were openly weeping in theaters.
That's why I don't watch Pixar movies anymore. They hit too deep.
Yeah, and so there was, and so Ash came from that, and that was sort of what I was trying to pull from, but there was this sort of like trying to build up and make it as big as one of those movies versus like doing something that like what Clerks did, a movie that had no money but found its audience and found a very niche, specific audience that was rabid about it, and that's what Friday the 13th is. It's like this old shitty horror slasher movie that got shit on by Robert Ebert and Ebert and what's his face.
Doesn't matter. Siskel
and Ebert.
Nobody listens to them anymore.
Nobody listens to them anymore. But I mean, you're just talking about at the time complete like garbage, but built a huge fan base still around.
Yeah.
That guy Vinny Guastafara, he's been in plays with David Mamet. He's been in Mamet films. He's been in, I think, over 150 TV episodes and movies and all this stuff. And he's like, the only thing anyone remembers me by is a supporting character I did in Friday the 13th Part 6.
Yeah.
He's like, it's crazy. These fans are crazy, but they love it, and I love it. And it's like, and that's what it is. And if you go to a horror film convention and you see people lined up around the block to meet Kane Hodder because he played Jason 4 times, and if you can build a fan base like that, you don't need anything else. They will supply with what you need. You just have to understand what they will supply back to you. So if they're only going to raise you $350,000 like my fan base does, I got to work within that boundary, but that's a decent boundary to work in. And and I don't have a studio telling me it's got to reach a certain format. It has to be 75, 85 minutes. If I only get an hour out of that $150,000 or $300,000, all that money's because all the money went on the screen. We made it look really, really cool. And it just is what it is, and it tells the complete story. I'm not going to follow the conventions of things that this isn't made for. I'm just going to make what's at my, what I can. And people don't care about the length. Like, people watch the first Never Hike. It's 50 minutes. It's like, it's the length it needs to be. Never Hike in the Snow was meant to be a pilot episode because we thought we were doing 4 more series like that. Then COVID hit, and so we just combined the last 3 episodes into Never Hike Alone 2. But those were the episodes that I had pitched to Warner Brothers. I was going to do them one at a time. And, it was just, get it. Let's just tell this story and it goes to this point, and then we'll pick up in the next one and we'll go as far as the money takes us, and we'll just keep trying to make it as good as possible. And that was the only journey. And there was no other distractions other than, obviously life distractions and things like that. But there wasn't any internal distractions of, okay, somebody in the company doesn't really like the director, so they want that director out. And like, this producer doesn't get along with that person, blah, blah, blah. It was just, everybody was just kind of coming up. We were all friends. We all wanted to make movies together. And that was the best. And it reminded me of the experience of like Rock Dog, about just sort of being our own pirate ship. Like, we're just floating in these waters, just making it on our own. We have so much money. There's nobody we can go to and ask for more money. It's just, we have to work with the money we get from crowdfunding, or we have to go out and raise more. And so, yeah, the more I do it, the more fun I have doing it. And I get to look at jobs now through the lens of, okay, is this worth my time? I'm not chasing it anymore. I'm not like, I got to be on this, I got to be on that. It's like, I've done enough now where I got a chance to work on a couple seasons of The Rookie. I worked on American Horror Stories. I did a lot of that stuff. So I went through those paces of getting yelled at by ADs for not having an actor there on time, or for losing one of them at Crafty, or, whatever other things happened on set, and just learning about anticipation and what the flow, like, once I understood after a while, like, I had a very good second AD who's now an AD, Jenny O'Keefe, who really drilled into me what the day was, and like how to get prepped for the day, what should happen in the morning, how to make your day, things to keep an eye out for, things to think about, understanding how all of the different departments work together, and how to manage all that, how to spin all those plates at the same time and pull everybody to that once. And once I sort of, that clicked, everything from animation and understanding story clicked, and how to get all of those things work together. And it's just like, okay, now I have my little race car engine that I can drive around my yard, and I'm happy with that for now. If I get an opportunity down the line to, direct a Godzilla movie, that's great. Like, I'd love that. That would be a dream come true. But I think that because I've discovered fan films, if there's ever any, like, if I want to make a Terminator fan film, I'll go off and make a Terminator fan film. If I want to make a Predator fan film, I'll make a Predator fan film. We were talking about,
I kind of want to see all those now.
Yeah. And we've done a bunch of Halloween fan films for other people. I've had a Halloween fan film that I've had in mind that I want to do called Halloween Never Ends.
Okay.
And so those are fan films I want to do, but I have original projects too, and I'll go back and forth and bounce around. But at the end of the day, like, I've got a country full of genre film festivals that will play them. I'll get to play them in front of people on big screens, go talk about them, go hang out with other nerds, talk about that stuff. And I'd rather treat my film career like a rock career. Like, I'm not thinking about getting in every theater at once. I'm thinking about going on a tour and playing one theater at a time. And every theater, it's a different experience. It's a different crowd. It's, you get to have that intimate experience. There's only so many that are going to happen, and then release it and let it happen. But you actually get to experience all those people experiencing it with you. And then it goes up online, you see comments and stuff like that. But I feel like getting to travel with your film, the idea of doing a road show, and that sort of being the future of independent film, as far as like, that's where people are really going to start to be able to get a return, is that like, if they make a movie that's good enough and they can maintain control, which is what crowdfunding allows people to do. Because when I'm done with these movies, maybe not the Never Hikes, like if Friday the 13th came in and said, mine, they could take them. But the original stuff, and anyone who has a good original project or has original stuff that they can create, look at like what the Dead Meat Channel is doing. Look at what Mr. Beast is doing. Like, he doesn't have to answer to anybody. He just uses his money to make what he wants. Pretty soon, there's going to be filmmakers good enough where they don't have to go to anybody. They don't have to ask permission from anybody. All they have to do is get an audience and ask them what they want to see. And the audience can say, we would like to see this project on your slate, please. Here's my slate for Whomp Stomp Films. If I host a show every week and I say, what do you guys want to see? And they say, oh, we want to see that one. And they resounding, we'll support it. Okay, well, here's the price for it. Help us raise this money. You help us raise this money, you get to see this. And it could be that easy. And so, imagine like, Eli Roth is doing it now. Robert Rodriguez is doing that now. And they're testing those waters. And I'm interested to see how that goes. But I think the people who are really going to be successful at it are going to be the people who grow organically in the people have already done it, but in the next few years that are really going to start to blossom. You're going to see more of, what was the filmmaker, Chris, he's a YouTuber, Chris something, I can't remember his name right now, but he did Shelby Oaks.
Okay.
And Chris Stuckman, thank you very much.
Sounds good like
beautiful,
that.
Beautiful. Yeah, so Chris Stuckman, who, spent years building a YouTube channel, millions of followers, went to those followers, I believe 7,000 of those followers raised $1.5 million for him to make his movie. Eventually, he gets to make that movie. He works with some pretty good producers. Eventually, gets picked up by Mike Flanagan, and now the movie's produced by Mike Flanagan and coming out this spring. And so that was something that was all born off of somebody's love of film, taking it to a YouTube crowd. And again, if he went down the system of going into a development house or being someone's assistant and having to eat crow all those years, maybe down the line someone throws him a bone and he gets to make something. But now he was in complete control of everything that he was doing. And every time he wants to go make a movie, he can go back to his people and get $1.2 million. It's a pretty good place to start. You can buy a piece of your own apple and own it. And I think that that's a big key thing that's going to change in the next, I don't know, however many years, that if we can keep creating projects that we can keep the copyright of and own it. And like, I put it on my YouTube channel and I release it as a Blu-ray and I get to do it as my own original thing. It may not make millions, but it may supplement my income. Meaning that I don't have to work 12 Fridays in a row in order to, make my living, that I can pick the movie I want to work 4 Fridays in a row and then go do whatever else I want for the rest of the year and maybe make some of my own movies and just try to make it as like amenable for my crew and just have fun and, whatever happens, but at least we get to make the movies that we want to make.
Vinny, I got to be honest, you're a goddamn inspiration. You really are. And I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast, man. It was nice kind of hearing no filmmaker has the same journey. There's no one way into this thing. And it was nice to get a perspective that's completely, the VFX and then going at it your own way. So obviously you're back here in New England and you seem like an open resource to a lot of people. If anybody wanted to find you or find your work, give them a shout out. Where can they go? Yeah, it would be at Whomp Stomp Films at gmail.com, WOMPSTOMPFILMS at Gmail. I answer all emails, so if you want to join our, it's called a volunteer list, but really what it is just our big crew list where, if you write me an email, say, hey, I'm a gaffer, or hey, I do sound, or I do VFX, and I'd really love to work on this type of movie or that type of movie, or, I'm in this location, you just send me that information, I add it to the list, and as we start to prep for a shoot, I just reach out to everybody and just do a mass email and say, hey, we're shooting these dates, I need these people, is anyone available for these days? A lot of those things also come from personal recommendations, so I'm sure I'm going to bump into a bunch of people and we'll work on set together, so if we ever get to work on set together, come up and ask me about it and ask me what we're working on, and I'll tell you,
here, we got this coming up. If you got some time, we'd love to have you out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to, like we kind of talked about at New Bedford Film Festival. It's like, I think the South Coast is really starting to come along. Boston obviously has a scene, Worcester has a scene. And I'm excited to see what our region of the country can start to generate and start to populate the rest of the country with, and kind of go out there in full force as like New England filmmakers trying to bring film to the county.
Hell yeah, brother.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
All right, man.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Vincent DiSanti. Thank you. Catch you on the next one.